I walked by today.
Yeah. Do we know if National Grid's coming?
No,
You still know when they walk in, right?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so,
Their thought was no one was gonna be here though, was what they,
all right, well, good evening, everyone. This is Thursday, June 23rd, 2016. This is the Board of Selectmen meeting. First up on our agenda, and maybe we'll move on to the next one real quick, is a public hearing on the petition of Verizon New England, Inc., a Massachusetts electric company, to install one new pole number T.11S/E.11-1 on the westerly side of Sugar Road at a point approximately 1,418 feet southerly from the center line of Powder Hill Road. And we're not sure if either National Grid or Verizon will be attending this meeting, so if you want to give them a moment, and then we'll either continue or...
Sure.
Okay.
We can do the town and Vic now, and if they come in...
That's fine, that's fine. Then why don't we, well, we need to move to open hearing, right?
Yes, you should move to open the hearing, and then you can continue it
Okay.
to
Do
July.
I have a motion to open the hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the hearing. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And since we're going to give them a little latitude to see if they show up, we'll continue this hearing momentarily, and we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a request to transfer the common victual license for Classic Pizza to the new owner. The current owner is Farid Awad, and the future owner is Mena Kalemi. Gentlemen, come on down. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good evening, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
How are you today?
Very good, very good.
Have a seat.
Thank you. So, we have a request to transfer the common victual license. We have, has all the paperwork been submitted that is needed?
no,
Oh, we
because
just-
you're gonna do the transfer first and then we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, any of you gentlemen have any questions? I know we have information on the corporation, et cetera, et cetera.
So just like a quick synopsis of this process.
Effectively, they come in, we invite the potential new owner to talk about plans for the business. And then it's a matter of the board voting to change the common vic to the new business. You can't necessarily provide a date certain because they haven't done the closing yet.
Right.
But you can certainly vote to say upon the closing that the common vic would become effective.
So you're buying the business from...
Yeah, me and another two guys, so our three partners.
So why don't you just give us a little overview of what your plans are?
My plan to make everybody happy in the town, make nice pizza, fresh food, clean. I done this job for like 7 years. I used to run Ears Pizza in Southborough. I was the manager there, and I like my job. I like to do every day fresh dough, fresh food. I like to feed the people and make everybody happy. That's my plan. And also we'll try to, we're gonna spend some money in the store. I'm gonna put like computer system. So example, like if you call me, so I know where you are right away. I don't have to save time for the people. And so first the food, second the service.
As much as he can.
Yeah. Okay. So make it like new generation. Good. Good. If you don't mind.
No, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine.
What kind of food?
It's pizza.
Just pizza?
Pizza and calzone. We're popular in the calzone. You know, make the best calzone in the town. You know the calzone? What does that mean?
No.
It's pizza. We just flip it and we put the food inside.
Yeah.
It's very nice. You have to come try.
How come you open it?
Sounds good.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure you're going to do a great job, and we certainly,
And please, I need also your help and the town help. So if I need something, you guys support me because I'm a small guy, small business, so I can
No, we're here. We certainly would like to support the businesses that are in town.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, so I guess the first thing is we need a motion to transfer the license.
Yes.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to transfer the licenses in you personally or your
I'm
corporation?
Karma Group Corporation, that's my company name, the Karma Group
Karma Group.
Inc. It's DBA Classic Pizza.
And what's the new entity? Is it
It's GIU.
GIU? Sorry.
We'll try-
JIU Inc.
GIU. We'll try to do like Jesus Love You, so under like...
You're gonna mow us over
Yeah.
with your goodness here. So I'll make a motion to transfer the common victualer's license from Karma Group Inc. to GIU Group?
GIU.
GIU. That's how you say it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate your help, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure. Hope to
Thank
see
you.
you around. Good luck.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing National Grid here or Verizon, we'll move on to our next item. Next item up is a request to hold the 4th of July celebration on Saturday, July 2nd from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Hi Karen, come on down. How are you today?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
How you doing?
Thank you for organizing a celebration of my anniversary.
Well, I did it just for
Very
you.
nice.
Taking it all in? Oh, you have to.
Yeah. So, Tom, this was that's additional stuff
Okay.
for tonight.
28 years.
We all stand back.
Okay.
Is that the thing? That's
Yes.
It's the latest thing you sent me.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So basically, it's the same format as we did last year.
Mhm.
We're starting an hour later at 10, just because it was easier for parents to get up there at 10 versus driving the decorated bikes. We're starting,
Oh, thank you.
we're gonna start at the library instead, just as an easier staging area, and also starting at the public safety building with all the kids. It's just makes more sense if there was ever an emergency. So we're gonna do down Main Street to Florence Sawyer, do the bike decorating contest, and then a bunch of celebrations from there. The lawnmower race that we did last year, which was a big hit. We're gonna do the kids mile run and a bunch of just little carnival games. So keeping it really local, kind of trying to keep it small, just a real community-based kind of event. The one thing that we did add new this year was that we have the Lincoln Minutemen coming, which was kind of an exciting ad, contacted by a local resident who's part of that group and offered to do it for us for free, which is great because usually it's about $1,000 to have them come.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, it's awesome. So they're going to lead the parade. They're going to fire their muskets powder only twice during the parade. They have a fife and drum. So they're going to lead all the kids down Main Street, and then they're going to do a firing sequence, which is going to be at the far end of Derby. The requirements from a security, safety perspective was to have one natural border, so it's the back of Derby, so it'll be the woods, and then we're going to put a border in the front, roped off, so the kids can see. They're going to be available afterward to do kind of a Q&A with everybody. We've talked to the police chief. There's no permits required, so it's pretty done and done, easy.
Cool. Which field is Derby field?
Derby's the one behind Florence Sawyer, where they have recess, the kids have recess.
Great. That was fine. Yeah, it sounds like you talked to the chief and everything.
Yep.
Everything was good with that.
Talked to the chief, talked to the security officer, went through the whole scenario. Actually, the gentleman who's part of the group, he actually met with Chief Nelson and went through everything with him, talked it through, so that conversation has transpired.
Super, that's great.
So will this event require overtime on the police department's part, or will it just be part of their day?
So they're gonna use their overtime. If they can't staff it from overtime, from what I understand, Nelson's gonna just donate his time to do it for free. So there's no detail, and I may be mixing the terminology up here, but they're gonna staff it for us. And then I've heard there was talk about establishing a parade committee, so there would actually be line items for things such as that. That didn't happen last year for whatever reason, so we just kind of picked it up at the last minute, just because the fear is if you don't do it one year, then you're gonna lose people for the next year. So they're kind of helping us backfill that.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
You don't?
I think this is great. I'll take a motion to approve the 4th of July celebration on Saturday, July 2nd from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
3:30.
Oh, sorry. Okay, 3:30.
We pushed the time out because we added the minutes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 4th of July parade on Saturday, July 2nd, from 10 to 3:30.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest that you vote to continue the hearing to July 14th. That doesn't look like it will.
All right, since National Grid and/or Verizon have not shown up, I'll take a motion that we continue the public hearing that we had opened up earlier to the next meeting, which is July 14th.
Yes.
And we'll do it at 7 o'clock?
7 a.m., yeah, 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Mr. Case, want to make a report in any way, or?
We'll wait till the continuation. I mean, there is no impact for any trees or anything like that. We'll just see what they have to say about the pole placement. It seems like it's far enough back off the road and stuff like that, so I'm okay with it.
And this is at the new,
Yes, it's just closer to 117 than the second entrance to, or the exit for Colonial Candies. It's on the opposite side of the road.
Okay.
There's a white stake a few feet off the stone wall. So it is visible to, you want to take a look at it. But it's right across from pole 11. It's a support for pole 11.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the hearing on the petition of Verizon New England to
Thursday, July 14th at 7 p.m.
Thursday, July 14th at 7 p.m.
second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, do we know if Mr. Slade was going to be coming?
I invited him, but I did not hear back from him, so.
Okay, so,
Do you want to?
I actually just got off the phone with him, just, he and I have been playing a little phone tag in terms of review, because we got the minutes. I just reviewed them and was gonna talk to them, he hadn't reviewed them all either. I wanted an opportunity to speak to him directly. So he suggested that we put this over to the
The 14th?
14th.
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
But I was, Mr. Chairman, I was also going to ask, I was interested in hearing from Teresa Sauer, and she is here, so I don't know if she would want to wait till July, or?
I think we should wait until the 14th when everybody's here. That's how I suggest we do it. All right, so.
So we need a motion to, well, just to, you don't really need a motion.
Let's just do it.
Say that we'll, okay.
Okay, right, we'll, yes, sir.
Can I just add one thing? We've been talking about the Board of Health a lot, but I'm also very interested in the ZBA being televised. So that could be in the future discussions as well.
Sure. All right, then we will, yes, Teresa.
I want to make sure I sent Donna an email to invite either all of you collectively or separately to tour the station. I think
Yeah,
seeing exactly what's going on, I think would be an amazing help in you guys understanding what it takes to put a meeting on the air.
I've actually shared it with them, and 2 out of 3 have already said they'd like to go, and I'd like to go as well, so.
I've already been on one of the tours before, so yes.
Okay,
So if we could get that scheduled, you just work with Linda, we'll get that scheduled.
okay,
I think that'd be great.
awesome.
All right, then we will move this discussion to the July 14th select meeting, okay? All right, next up is town administrator report.
Okay, first is Minuteman, and normally I speak to Minuteman, but the big development that happened Monday was at a meeting in Arlington that I was unavailable to attend, and Jonathan graciously agreed to be there for 8 AM, so I think I should let him report out on what happened.
Yep, so we met, and I would say Belmont is, very dug in. They're not open to being influenced by any show of any type or any words. They're very firm that they want to be released, and they really want us to reject them, like to say leave, rather than them having to go through the process of getting a 2/3 vote from their town to be released. So I think that's the 16N option.
Well, the 16N option would be the district-wide vote to approve the borrowing, to incur the debt. But the district agreement, I don't know, the district agreement states that the only way you can exit the district is to have all the other towns vote to release you. Or actually, but now with the new agreement, I think it's 2/3 of the towns to vote to release you, and I don't know by statute if they need to have a town meeting vote or not.
So I think there were two options, and I'm not clear on them, but I think the consensus among the towns, the other towns that want Minuteman to be rebuilt, to want to go forward with that, there was a vote, and everybody, of the options, the towns supporting Minuteman want Belmont to have a vote this summer saying, we don't want to be part of the district, we want out. And so that's a 2/3 vote. So I think the question is, Belmont, the representatives from the school board and the town government really wanted a short and wanted, like, the school board that represents Minuteman to just say, you're out. So it sounds like there's a question of whether they can get together a 2/3 vote this summer. But that's not, either way, I don't think is good for us, because they could just kind of drag the whole thing down if they don't do a vote, or if they do a vote and it's not a clear vote.
Was there any discussion about why they didn't drop out of the district in February when everybody else that wanted to leave did that?
I mean, that came up briefly. They thought, they were optimistic that it would get better. The construction scope would shrink. That's where they were. They felt like they could influence it. So they were saying it's better to, break this deal and work on a better deal that's 3 to 5 years down the road, then go ahead with it. So they were very dug in.
Well, Don, the earlier vote where the 6 of the towns decided to leave, that was a vote, an individual vote within the town itself.
Yes, each town voted on that separately at their annual town meeting.
At their annual town meeting. I guess obviously this is all too new, but, one thing to find out if Belmont can hold another town vote, a special town meeting to basically replay that same article.
Unless I'm misunderstanding the statute, I don't think I am, they're going to need to have a special town meeting to have a 2/3 vote.
Right.
And I don't believe, I can understand, I see where they're going with their idea, but they can't just say to the school committee, okay, well, you guys vote us out.
No, I don't think that can happen.
Yeah, the school committee said that would look terrible if they voted a township out without the town voting to be asked to be released.
The town needs to have a voice in it. I mean, they may be wondering whether or not they can get a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
I think that is a question.
How many people do they send?
I think
24, 27, something like that, I think, is it? I don't remember.
4 or 27?
students.
Wow.
I think it's in that realm, I'm not
I
sure.
mean, that was one of their issues was how much towns who aren't part of the system, how much do they pay for students and whether they would really pay for capital costs as part of their tuition.
Well, it seems to me that assuming they have a vote, another town meeting, to vote to leave the district, and it's successful, and then we move forward with 9 towns,
Mhm.
and the way things are now is that some of the capital costs are included in the tuition. So for Belmont, aren't their costs going to be about the same?
Well, if Belmont leaves the district, then I think, and I don't know whatever assumptions Belmont is making here, but if Belmont leaves the district, they're going to have to send their kids somewhere else, because they're not going to be coming to Minuteman anymore. So
No, they could go to Minuteman.
they could go to Minuteman, but then they're going to be having the same cost.
Oh, well, exactly. I'm saying, but if they choose to go to Minuteman, then their costs are the same.
The costs are the same.
Same,
Right,
regardless. And then if they're lucky enough to find some other place to send their kids, which is highly doubtful. So, either way, that they're gonna be spending about the same amount of
And
money.
the other risk a town does of that size, and I don't hold me to the mid-20s, because I can't remember all the different towns' tuitions, head count, but they may not be able to send them all in one school. There could be a vocational school that could take 9, and another one that could take 6, and another one, so
That's right.
their transportation costs could actually go up quite a bit, having to pay for 2 or 3 buses instead of one potentially. So it's a very complex situation. It's not easily understood, and, I just hope that they've thought it all through.
Well, it appears that they haven't. Plus, they're quite frankly, they're screwing the other 9 towns.
But one thing that we will have to request of Minuteman, and I'll make sure that I request it, is now that theoretically we go from 10 towns to 9, that means the project cost is going to be split 9 ways instead of 10, and we need to understand the impact, the tax impact of that. We know from the current plan that the average household was going to be hit by about, I think it was about $60 a year. So I don't know, you can't draw a straight line through that and say, well, it's going to go up 10%, because, it's not that easy, but they will have to get figures out to all the remaining member towns to explain what the expense will be.
Right.
The driving factor behind Belmont withdrawing is not financial though, is it?
I don't know, I mean, I'm sorry, John.
They think the building's in the wrong place. So there are a lot of funny politics going on. It sounds like they don't want it to be in, I guess it's in Concord, New Bedford. They want it closer. But just, so they need to have a town meeting, a special town meeting, and then all the other towns need to have, in the group, even the ones that are opting out, have to have a town meeting after that. That's my understanding.
Now, what can be done with the project is, if we don't have a town, if any town doesn't have a town meeting, that's not disapproval. You have to have a town meeting to disapprove a project, but in this case, I believe if a town didn't hold a town meeting, that would be approval. So you don't necessarily have to incur the expense of a town meeting if that's the only item that you would have on the warrant.
But right now, my understanding is the only town meeting that's needed is for Belmont to vote themselves out of the district. Why would the other 9 towns need a town meeting for what?
To accept that, I think.
Well, theoretically, no,
No.
to vote to let a town out can be done at the school committee level.
Okay.
But what may need to be done, just hypothesizing, is since the cost of the project per town will change, perhaps a town will want to meet to see the new expense and revote what they did before. That's not required, but it's something that a town may want to do.
Mr. Cody?
Brad Cody, Nashway Road. My question is, for Belmont, it was my understanding, Don, you came before advisory easily a year ago and were explaining all this, and I thought there was a deadline well in the past that said, if you go beyond this line, you're gonna be involved with these costs. So I'm getting the impression now that Belmont has the opportunity in the last minute to bug out of this, and because of what you just said, the tax bill changes from 10 and now it's going to be across 9. How are they not still responsible for some of these costs since they did not back out well over a year ago?
Because they voted down the project when they had their annual town meeting. So just one disapproval killed the project's dead right now. It needs to be brought back to life by subsequent action. Because with 16-member towns, all 16 towns, if one town voted to disapprove the debt, then the project was dead. So the hope was, and the meeting Jonathan attended, was to try to provide Belmont with information that the district felt they had not allowed to be provided before. And what we're hearing is Belmont saying, we're not interested in taking another vote, we don't support this project.
Well, I'd like to be the starting center fielder for the Red Sox, but, you know, you don't always go where you want.
That's true.
So, well, I hope the remaining towns have some type of action plan, depending upon how Belmont goes.
Well, the school committee is going to be having a special meeting. The request from the superintendent was to meet either the 27th or the 28th of this month, and I don't know if that's been scheduled yet. To talk about doing the Chapter 71, Section 16N vote, which calls for the district-wide ballot, and the project would then be voted up or down based on the aggregate total across the district, and not by individual town. And that is at the expense of the school district, not the towns.
Craig, go ahead.
You basically covered a lot of it. I was concerned with the revote of our exclusion of the debt. If it goes up, let's say 5% or whatever, because of the absence of Belmont. I was also going to point out that they could be forced, I assume, to pay for it with the 16N until they get either ejected or choose to leave and get approved to leave, whatever. So,
I mean, the talk was that Minuteman would stay in the existing building and have to renovate.
Okay, next, a brief overview of what's happened to date within the Sugar Valley Winery. I just want to be careful. I'm not going to get into any areas that would be of a personal business nature for Mr. Pelletier. I don't want to be speaking for him, and I don't want to provide any information that he may or may not wish to be provided, so I'm going to give a general overview. The genesis of this issue actually happened, it began in, if my memory is correct, it was the annual town meeting in 2011, when a request came from the winery to change their alcohol license for their restaurant to an all alcohol license. Because currently what they serve is what they make there. And town meeting passed that unanimously, and it went on to the ABCC, and the ABCC rejected it because of some of the language that was in the article, which was frustrating because I'm sorry, that's not accurate. The legislature rejected it. The attorney for the legislature rejected it because of some language that was in the article. The language which our attorney at the time, Brackett and Lucas, one of the attorneys from there, got from the ABCC attorney. So our attorney did not draft it in a vacuum. So it got kicked back. We had to do it again, I believe, in 2012. And again, the town passed it unanimously. And when the ABCC started, and it went through the legislature, I believe that was then that the ABCC started taking a look at things and saying, wait a minute, there's one license has been issued. He's got one more license than he should have. So that conversation took place for some period of time, and then in either late May or early June, I don't remember which, of 2013, a meeting took place in this room that was organized by Representative Hogan and Senator Flanagan, that consisted of Representative Hogan, I believe it was Senator Flanagan's Chief of Staff, myself, and two representatives from the ABCC. The meeting lasted probably an hour and a half or 2 hours. And the crux of the meeting was, trying to sort out the definition of premises and how a premises is represented. So the attorney for the ABCC was pretty steadfast, as was the other person from the ABCC, that their interpretation was correct. Mr. Pelletier's was not. And it was a fairly spirited conversation here at the table. So at the time, it was, if there are other avenues, there are other avenues, but the two options that were presented to Mr. Pelletier at the time was that he could change ownership of the restaurant into someone else's name, they suggested his wife, or he could build a connection between two of the buildings so that the two buildings would then, because since they're connected, would be considered to be one premises and not two, so one license may not need to be issued. He felt that neither one of those was acceptable or reasonable. So that's what took place then. And then I know early this year, in March I believe it was, he was notified by the ABCC of their intent to not renew his license at the end of this year. And that was when things started to heat up again. So as I've said to various reporters that have called me, and as I've said to anyone who has asked me about it, the town of Bolton stands ready to support him in any way that we can legally. And as recently as this morning, there was a meeting at the winery, Mr. Pelletier, Representative Hogan, and myself, to sort through some of this stuff and provide the latest information, which Representative Hogan did. And the bottom line is that it really seems to not be something that can be sorted out, at least not easily at the local level. It doesn't appear that zoning relief would be the answer. I don't know that the CBA would have anything to do with some sort of variance, but getting it sorted out at the state level is really where it needs to be resolved, be it the Treasurer's office, be it the Attorney General's office, or at the Governor's level. So that's where things are taking place right now. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to say anything about Mr. Pelletier's private business information. I also don't want to say anything prematurely about conversations that could be taking place at the state level, because I wouldn't want to potentially derail anything with any premature statements. So, but the town has been involved in this. I personally have been involved in this for well over 3 years, probably closer to 4 than 3. So this is not a new issue. This is an issue that's been going on for some time. And Mr. Pelletier, when he does speak about how he feels he's been supported or not at various levels, has always been very gracious about the support that he's received from the town. And reiterated again, and I reiterated again this morning, that if he comes up with a specific ask that he needs from the town, that the town does stand ready to support him, and we'll do whatever we can. And he clearly appreciated that. So I think that's probably all I can say right now.
Right. So there are some things in play, and we just let them play out.
Yes. Next update on Camp Virginia. I don't see Ashley here. We saw an email earlier that said that we could expect her to be here, but anyway, I mean, I can proceed through the rest of this and see if she comes and then circle back if she doesn't. At the last meeting, the board requested that I draft a letter that could be sent to the Bolton Conservation Trust regarding the horse trough and the movement of such. And in your packets, I believe you have the draft letter for that.
Yeah, that's what I gave you in your recent packet.
So it's pretty straightforward. I think it touched the points that the board requested that we address at the last meeting. But any edits that you would like to see to it, of course, will be done, and we can get it out to the trust in tomorrow's mail.
I'm fine with it.
Okay?
I'm fine with it.
All right, so if you could just make a motion to authorize me to send that out under my signature on my letterhead.
I'd like to make a motion to Don to send out this letter to the Bolton Conservation Trust related to the watering trough and moving it.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you. Next is, also at our last meeting, discussed sending a letter to DOT, specifically Mr. Lorian, to invite him to an upcoming meeting to discuss the safety issues that we've been talking about down in the area of Main Street and Green Road. And so you have that in your packet. And again, any suggested edits you may have, we'll be happy to incorporate, and then it would go out under my signature on my letterhead.
So my recollection is that we brought this up at Tri-Town, and so, you know, I wanted to kind of have a larger kind of audience.
Well, we'll certainly make them aware of it once it's scheduled. I'll make a point of notifying them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can put in a motion that it's, you know, that this concerns parents in Lancaster and Stowe.
Well, I see what you're saying. So it's just not a particular interest of us, to us, it's a particular interest to all parents, 3 towns who send.
I mean, yeah, so it's an issue of high school age
Yeah.
students who are driving or passengers in cars. It's also of parents who are in and out of there. It's also an issue for Bolton residents going to the soccer fields or going to the dump. So it's, you know, it's bigger. It is a Bolton issue, but it really is a 3-town issue, and it did come up at the Tri-Town, so
Sure.
if you could reference that.
We could certainly do that.
That'd be good.
It's a good point. Any other comments, or?
Nope.
All right, we'll certainly make that edit. So again, if I could just have a motion to authorize me to send that out with the requested edits.
I'll make a motion for the board to authorize the town to execute and send the June 23rd letter that's in front of us with the discussed edits to DOT.
Oh, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And thank you. I guess I'll circle back to Camp Virginia then.
There you go.
Yeah, Dawn, I have an email that says she can come the 14th, July 14th,
Okay.
Ashley.
So that came after the 5:40 email that said she was coming tonight?
No,
Okay.
that's what that one said.
Yeah,
She was
okay.
coming the 14th.
All right, I could have sworn it said the 23rd, my mistake. All right, so the update on Camp Virginia, and it's been, you know, widely circulated by now that the project that we're hoping to accomplish, to work with the Sudbury Valley Conservation Trust, I guess it's fair to say is on hold. In further discussions with Ashley Davies, you know, as I said in the email to the board, certain new things coming up. First it was, we were going to need to get an appraisal done that would cost the town at approximately $4,000, and it was going to have to be done pretty quickly to have to go along with the grant application, which was really a relatively minor issue that we could have dealt with, but also the fact that, you know, we had people working really hard trying to get that open space plan updated, and I think we would have gotten there. I think our volunteers would have gotten that done. But then in my discussion with Ashley regarding whether or not the Girl Scouts would provide us with a one-year extension, so we didn't have to rush through this, and she reported back and said no. They said absolutely not. You know, they're pretty firm and they have other interest. The point came up that she stated that she had never confirmed the price of $800,000, with the Girl Scouts, and I said, well, you've got to do that right away. We have to know that that's what we're dealing with. And she got back to me certainly within half an hour and said she'd spoken with the Girl Scouts and their price was a firm $975,000. And that became the deal breaker for the Sudbury Valley Conservation Trust, because they said an additional $175,000 in fundraising was not something that they were willing to take on. And that then it was also stated, well, given everything else, and that it's going to be an extremely competitive grant round this time, that wasn't an action that they were willing to take on. So that was the ramp up to where things came to a halt. So as soon as I had that information, I informed the board. I also reached out to, I called Liz Clues, who was really helping to spearhead the effort to get the open space plan updated. I didn't want her to just read that in an email. I thought I should tell her personally, and I did. And then I forwarded the email on to Liz that I'd sent to the Board of Selectmen and asked her to forward it on to whomever she felt was appropriate. So that's how that got communicated. So I was very surprised and I was very disappointed. I thought that it was a great opportunity for the town to pursue. We had so many people who had stepped up to, again, to really roll up their sleeves and work hard. So and I can't say enough again about the quality of our volunteers, but that's really the build-up and how we ended up where we are. So at this point, I don't know. I know that Ashley was going to be reaching out to the Boy Scouts to see if they might be interested in working on something to try to acquire the land. I don't know where that stands. I haven't seen any update on that.
Is that listed for sale now, or?
I don't believe so. If it is, I'm not aware of it.
I mean, it's safe to say that all of these requirements started coming up at the last minute. And I'm surprised, given that the Sudbury Valley Trust kind of does this for a living, as to how surprised everyone was that all these new requirements were coming up almost at the 11th hour. So, I mean, the town did everything that we were able to do, and we certainly were rushing to try to get the open space plan revised. So clearly this missed opportunity is no fault of the town. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, I don't understand why the Sudbury Valley Trust proceeded in the fashion that they did, and that's why we were going to ask them to come here today.
Now, I would like to make it clear that no one feels that work should stop on getting that open space.
Oh, no,
plan,
because we do.
But you don't have to do it at breakneck speed.
Exactly.
But the work will continue.
Right, the open space plan expired last year, and that is something that does need to be updated, and we do have to have it current, but we don't necessarily have to rush to get it done.
Are they committed to open space, or are they going to sell it to the highest bidder?
I didn't speak directly to them. All I can say is that the inference that I took away was that that they may well sell it to the highest bidder.
Great.
So has anyone done the math? I'm Craig Lauer, 1020 on Main Street. Anyone done the math on how many kids could be living in the 10 or so houses that'll be put on that plot of land? I mean, we're paying, I'm gonna guess, $10,000 a kid, times 10, 17, whatever. So multiply that by 10 houses times 2 kids, might serve the town well to belly up to the bar with $200,000 and get this 975 down to 775 and keep the process going, if we can. Or even more. I mean, that's 1 year of kids in 10 houses, not even.
Well, it's just way too late in the process to do that. We wouldn't have time to get a town meeting done to vote an appropriation if it even came to that. And the Sudbury Valley Trust stopped any work on the grant application, so
Right.
we don't even have an option to do that.
Right. The opportunity is lost. I mean, it's not really clear how many house lots.
Sure.
There was some independent appraisal done, and what we had before us showed 13 house lots, but it's not clear how they calculated that. There were a variety of plans. One was a plan with a road going through from Hudson Road through Long Hill. But I don't know whether they actually figured out whether they could actually put 13, then there was a phosphid plan and all of that stuff, so, you know.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned
10,
10
13,
houses.
whatever. But unfortunately, you know, to Don's point, Sudbury Valley Trust stopped their wheels in motion, so there's no way to turn it around at this point in time.
Would the trustees of reservations be interested? Have you talked to them at all?
The trustees, they call themselves now.
It's another nonprofit.
Well, it's not really our property to be asking
I
people to
know,
buy.
I certainly don't want to see the Boy Scouts buying more. What they're doing over at Persons Park is another matter.
The one thing I don't have in my list, I just wanted to give a quick verbal update on. I don't know if you've noticed or not, if any of you have noticed or not, but we did get the equipment in for the improvement to the lights at Still River and Main Street. And in speaking with Harold, you know, I really thought it would be a good idea to get out ahead of this. I mean, we got the cameras in, we got the box in, and rather than have it sit in a closet and wait for the intersection to fail and incur certainly expense, if not, you know, maybe personal injury, let's prophylactically get the equipment installed, let's get it up and running so we can avoid any such situation. So we did that, it's up and running, it's running from what I can see perfectly. So the new equipment is there with the cameras, so if you're approaching the intersection from Still River in either direction, you don't have that what seems like an interminably long wait. The camera will sense you and the lights will cycle more quickly.
Oh, so it's a sensory eye, it's not filming for accidents?
That's right, that's right.
Yeah,
It's strictly sensory.
Yeah.
Great.
So I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that. And unless you have any other questions for me, that's all I have.
All right, moving on to Board of Selectmen business. First up are appointments, boards and committees, the Mart Advisory Board, and the Magic representatives. So we have a list. I'll go through the list, and I think unless someone has an objection, you can vote the whole list as in its entirety.
Yes, you could.
All right, so expiring terms for 2016, and these are folks that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And these folks are all looking to re-up.
Yes, I have
So,
checked all of them.
Okay, so for the various boards and committees, Affordable Housing Partnership Trustees, Doug Story, Agricultural Commission, Teresa Sauer, Ambulance Director, Margaret Diaz, Animal Control Officer, Susan Latham, Assistant ACO is Phyllis Tower, Appeals Board, Gerard Ahern, Audit Advisory Board for the Neshoba Regional School District is Heather Hughes, Controlling Official is Mike Savageau, Capital Planning Committee is Colin Bradley, Conservation Committee is Brian Berube, Conservation Commission is Liz Luke Close, Council on Aging is Pat Bensettler, Economic Development Committee, and there are 6 individuals: Bruce Slater, Michael Murphy, Eric Nyland, Colleen Demmer, David Pettit, and Mark Ayotte. Emergency Management Co-Directors, of which we have 2, John Metzer and Chief Nelson. Our Fire Chief and Forest Warden is John Menzer. Historical Commission, we have 2, is Robert Bush and Jean Marie Padovalo. Thank you. And Assistant Wiring Inspector is Peter Casello. Our Wiring Inspector is James Boudry. Insurance Advisory Committee, of which there are 3, Barbara Brown, Donna Madden, and Nanachka Rogers. Mart Advisory Board, Ken Troop. Minuteman Advisory Group for basically Magic is Don Lowe. And the Board of Registrars is Pamela Powell. The second Board of Registrars is Carol O'Lawton. Tree Warden is Mark Case. Veterans Agent is James Cabral. And our wheat representative is Pat Bensettler. Any questions with those folks?
So what is MART? MART Advisory Board?
The MART Advisory Board, it's the,
Montechusett Area Regional Transport.
yes, thank you.
Yes.
That is, from our perspective, it oversees the van service, the senior van that we get. They do more functions than that, obviously, but our direct benefit from that is the MART van that we use to transport seniors.
And so Ken sits on, or would sit on, a specific board or the general board, or
I believe it's a general board.
It's the advisory board.
Yeah.
That's the advisory board.
for the company itself?
Yeah.
And so what's the difference between the forest warden and the tree warden? Is this ceremonial?
Quite honestly, I can't even make up an answer to that. I mean, I know specifically what the tree warden does. I don't know specifically what the fire warden does. I didn't know we had a fire warden forest warden until I saw the list of appointees at one point. I don't think I picked up on it before.
Yes, ma'am.
Just one question about Pat Bensutter and the COA.
Mhm.
The COA hasn't voted on any representative to whatever group this is. She's weak, but she also is listed as the Council on Aging, and I don't believe the Council on Aging has voted on that.
Right, Council on Aging, yeah.
Yes, and we haven't discussed that at all. There might be someone else who would like that role.
Okay, well, we can withdraw.
That would be great, and I'll bring it up at the next Council on Aging meeting on July 5th.
All right.
And then if you would get the name back to us, Pat, or whoever else, then we'll put it on the agenda for July 14th.
That's fine, yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, I just want to give the council
Okay.
a chance to chime in.
Okay.
So a lot of these positions, you just kind of serve until you
Until you're
want to.
reappointed. That's right. Or yes,
You step away.
yes.
Any other questions? I'll take a motion that we approve the list in its entirety with the exception of the Council on Aging position, which currently has Pat Bensutter listed.
We'll move the motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Next up is approval of the revision to Form 43 for Fortini's Restaurant. As requested by the ABCC, the name of the license will be revised to read Fortini's Restaurant and Bar versus Anastasia's.
His name.
His name.
Anastasios Caceres.
Thank you.
So this was just basically an FYI, the board already ordered it, but I didn't want to change something that you had already, executed. So just as an FYI, if you're fine with it, I just have to send this form back to ABCC and
Okay.
hopefully the paperwork will.
The form came back from the ABCC again, and they asked that had it be
All
moved.
right, so we voted on it, so we don't need to.
Okay, no, that's information. We're not going to change anything on the form without informing the
No, that's
board.
fine. That's fine.
And they rejected it because it was in someone's name rather than in the
Yes.
entity?
Yes.
All right, next up is the approval of year-end transfers. And I believe we have
one, yes.
I believe that's for $30,000 for snow and ice?
Nope.
No,
No,
this is
separate
it.
that.
This is the end-of-year
Okay.
transfer within the budget, so it's for
Oh, right,
ambulance
okay.
for $5,000.
Okay, okay.
Just as a point of information, at the end of the year, if a department needs additional funds, we have the ability to transfer up to 3%. I believe it is of the total budget. I'm not looking at the form. Yes, it says it right on here. Transfer may not exceed 3% of the annual budget of the department or $5,000, whichever is greater. So it's a line item within the ambulance budget. So if this is not an increase to the budget itself, it's moving it from one section of the budget to another. Correct, Mr. Chairman?
That is correct.
And what was the reason for the transfer?
I don't have.
It was just, it was related to the concept of Bolton Ambulance, calling in the services of Woods Ambulance for special need, high-risk cases. And so when that transfer takes place, Wood is paid immediately, I believe, and then we're reimbursed. So that's number one. Number two, Woods is that much closer now based out of Lancaster. And so Margie is going back through the records, determining are they being passed off more so than in the past, but then also just the overall concept of ambulance where we can budget for a number, but it's per call. I mean, we honestly have no idea what's going to happen over the course of a year. So, we see Margie every year. Is where we try and analyze the numbers and look through the past and try and pick a number for the upcoming budget, but it's a moving target.
So this is basically to outsource something that they prefer not to handle, basically?
It's not necessarily prefer to handle. My understanding is it's just more advanced life support, where the town of Bolton is not in position to handle those situations. So the example that Margie gave was where in years past, where Woods was further out, if they're making the call, they're 12 minutes away from the hospital, and Woods is 11 minutes out, to hell with it, they're just gonna drive to the hospital. But seeing how they're right over in Lancaster, they're at the location that much sooner. And so, but Margie is going back and looking through the calls over this past year to assess, is it a function of more advanced situations? Is it a function of, oh yeah, what the hell? Woods is here, let's just hand it over to him. And or just increased volume.
Yeah, so I had an experience with both showing up. It was the Boy Scouts sleepover and somebody had sunstroke, and so both showed up, and I think the question at the time was, some people asked, why hadn't Booth's kind of canceled once, they heard that, I guess the Bolton squad was there. So.
Yeah, it could have been a case if there was a stroke going on, it could have been something that, I don't know the specifics,
His
but,
heat exhaustion.
but if there's something, it's some specialized treatment, it may be something that we want Woods in for, I don't.
Oh, no doubt. And I took it the next step further, asking Margie the other night, what would it take to have Bolton in position of these capabilities? And, she didn't give me a number, but she absolutely explained to me that it was a big number. Mm-hmm. And so outsourcing, in this fashion really is the way to go.
Well, Woods is providing ALS, it's not.
Yes.
And that's a service we can't offer.
Yeah.
So I think that's the answer. Yes, and you're right, it would be a big number for us to be able to do that.
I'm assuming you voted to approve this.
We did.
Okay, well, this wasn't circled here, so I'm circled
I just have one follow-up question. So basically, Bolton may be the first responder, get there, realize this is a situation that requires more capability, and they bring in Woods.
Exactly.
And so they have to pay Woods? We have to pay Woods for that?
So my understanding is Woods gets paid immediately.
I see.
And then through that process, the town of Bolton ultimately gets.
There's a lag before we sign
Reimbursement.
Yes.
With the Boy Scouts, they came almost simultaneously.
Yeah, and Jonathan, that's what Margie mentioned, that she's seeing more of that over this past year because of Woods opening up a location in Lancaster.
That's a situation we didn't have before until recently. They're right on Main Street in Lancaster.
And it's also my understanding, the way Margie explained it to me, was that in a situation like that, if they both show up and, Woods really isn't needed, then they go on their way, and, it's not like there's
There's no
a
charge.
charge. Yeah, there isn't a charge like, we show up or don't show up to the doctors and they hit us anyway, so.
Okay, so in that case, if they didn't treat anybody, there's no charge?
That is my understanding. So in your example, if Bolton took possession of that person and took them to the hospital, then it's Bolton.
Yes, Barb?
Just as a member of the ambulance, not to cover what Marty would say, anything.
You could have stepped in earlier. I was going on a little too.
If dispatch receives a call, that could be a life-threatening call, they call the Bolton ambulance, and they also call the advanced life support. Bolton, we're EMTs. Maybe we have 1 or 2 paramedics who work for other companies, actually ambulance companies that are part of our group. But they come, and if it's something that proves that it's not needed, they just leave without. If they transport, they bill the people. The same way as Bolton Ambulance bills the people through a company.
Right.
And the money comes back into the town for the transport. So there's a lot of money that comes back into the town that goes into what? The fund or the
Ambulance
reserve fund?
receipts reserve, yeah.
That's right.
So, what is being put out doesn't all stay out there.
Right,
It
right,
comes
right.
back in. So sometimes the only figure you see is what's going out, but you have to consider what comes back in also. The same with the MART ban for the seniors.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next up is to execute the municipal roadway vegetation management plan. This is a continuation of the discussion we had at the last meeting. Harold, come on down.
I'd like to clarify something on the other slight comment that was made about summer people doing it. The people that spray are those that are licensed. We have 2 that are licensed, not only they're licensed, but they go to continuing education on it.
Right, so it's not...
So it's not hit and miss and dilly-dilly as it was made sound.
Right, so it's not the summer EMT.
No.
It's regular employees.
It's regular employees that are licensed by the state.
Right, well, that's what I
And
think.
insured by Murphy Insurance.
Right.
And I believe the specific concern that came up at the last meeting was the use of Roundup as one of the products.
We're regulated what we can use. You are correct. The statements you made were right. Dow, Monsanto, those are the ones. Those are the only ones we can use.
And so I brought my own handout here today. I mean, I'm opposed to using Roundup. I won't vote for it.
But if it's board votes not to spray, vote not to spray in any town land. All right? And then we're done. It's an end of the subject. It's not something I'm gonna fight over. It's completely yours.
Yeah, I mean...
You can have a discussion between yourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all, and
I'm not saying,
I've been at other meetings where you complain about the micromanagement of your department, and I appreciate that, and it isn't. It's just that, I come from a family with a lot of cancer, there's a lot of autism, there's a lot
I've
of...
already had cancer.
So I can't, and no disrespect to you,
I
Mr.
said, there
Wright.
is nothing taken here.
Okay.
None. If the board votes not to spray, we don't spray.
I guess I'd like to know why, I can't imagine why anyone's using Roundup anymore, but
Please don't eat any corn then, or any soybean.
No, I know.
That's all we use.
I know what goes on, I just disagree with it. But for the town's purposes, the vegetation plan, what is the goal of the vegetation plan? To keep down what?
Poison ivy, because it's a dangerous plant, and I have people that when they get it, we have to send them to the hospital. If we get requests from residents, certain residents in certain areas will call and ask for the spraying. If the board votes no, then we just tell the townspeople, the board voted no.
I mean, I don't
It's
think.
quite simple.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question the long-term use of Roundup on roadsides, on farms, or anything gives people cancer. I don't think that's in dispute. And I don't want to trade cancer for poison ivy, but that's just me, you know?
It's your choice. There are other products like Rodeo and a few others. They all seem to have the same ingredients. There's one that didn't, and I couldn't find enough about it to come here and inquiring and asking and calling Food and Agriculture. I never got a definitive answer.
And I actually saw Mr., because I have recollections from growing up, like the tractor going down the road and cutting with the sucker
It
bar.
still does.
And I saw Mr.
Battis.
today. So I'm glad I wasn't misremembering. But, I mean, couldn't we take another approach like that? Is there an organic remedy for poison ivy?
Not that I can find. I could not find one.
But I think you said.
Somebody emailed me actually and said.
Yeah, I've read about it with salt, with vinegar and so on, and then I've read reports that it doesn't work. And to mix it in the amount that we need, the home element of 1 gallon is pretty hard for us.
Yeah, and then this is from Rodale Press, which has been around for 50 years. I brought you a copy. I brought a copy for the other selectmen and anyone who, there's extra copies here. But one of the bullet points in this brief article is that it doesn't necessarily work on the vegetation that's it's supposed to kill. And this is very brief, I'll admit that, but there is.
We use it in low doses and I think ours is like 5% is what we use in it.
It's regulated.
It's very much regulated, they're very careful on how much they put out. But if you don't want it done, that's fine.
I think the question is that you have a list of items that you're allowed to use.
That's correct.
So, I mean, the discussion of whether we substitute Roundup for something else is moot. Because there is a list, and unfortunately, we can't have the debate of substituting Roundup for, vinegar and water or whatever, organic kind of thing. It's the list, it's either the list or you don't spray.
It's on the right-of-way. The right-of-way is regulated, completely regulated.
Well, I'm all for the mowing, clearing sight lines, things like that. I have to agree that, I'm critical of, this type of spraying. It kills it temporarily, but it seems to come back every year. Poison ivy is a native plant. It is a nuisance. It just seems, a waste of money and effort to be kind of tackling, trying to kill a native plant on the sides of our roads.
Excuse me, Martha Remington, is this blanket spraying or is it by request from residents in front of their frontage?
Much of it is requested.
Much of it is not.
And we have some residents that call for us not to spray, and we don't spray. If we see a bad crop of it that's creeping on the road and people are walking, they're going to step over into it, we will spray there.
But
unless we've been requested not to.
Right, so it's either requested or not requested. You just don't do a blanket spray.
No, we haven't got the time to do the blanket spray.
Mr. Cody?
Is there any negative ramifications if it's not done? Is there any impact to the road, side of the road, to the integrity of the road over time of this not being done?
As far as the pavement goes, no. It's nothing. Where the danger is if you are walking and you have to step off to the side of the road because a car is coming or something and you step into it and you're highly allergic, you will,
Yeah.
you will get it. There's where the biggest danger is.
Step around and you hit my car.
What?
I know in the past, some very prominent people in town, relatives of other selectmen, have pleaded that there not be spraying for poison ivy. It looks horrible when it's brown. It provides food for many wild birds. And from the time you're a little kid, your parents should be warning you about poison ivy and how to protect yourself and not wade in it. So I feel it's the responsibility of the citizens to do everything they can not to step in it and wear something that can be immediately washed when they get home. I mean, it looks terrible because you've got all this dead vegetation. Sorry.
Can't we go back to the state and say, you know, seek an alternative? I mean, I know there's this list, but I mean, we can't be the only ones that are questioning this. And
At this point, they're standing by the list. That's what it is. I asked them for an organic, something organic to use. I never got an answer back. Only thing I found is what's online, is organic sprays.
They're like old school. When I was growing up, they just mowed the side of the road. This kind of spraying of herbicides is kind of a new thing. And I've seen the poison ivy grow right back where it was browned out from spraying. I don't think it's effective. I think this is an area where we could save a little bit of money. So
How
I'm
much
not in
is-
favor of this.
how much is the spraying?
About, the spraying alone, the spray is about $2,500. It depends how much time we have and where we're gonna do it, but $2,500. Other years we've spent much more. We have a regular spray ring that goes in the back of the trucks. We haven't used that for years. We use a backpack, and that's the most that goes out. Maybe some years it's less, way less than that. Depends on the time and we have for the people that are licensed to spray and what they have to do. They're very busy. And then it comes to the requests that could come in.
If a resident requested it, would we be allowed to do it or no?
If it's
If
on their
it's on the
frontage,
list.
they need to deal with their property.
That's what I'm asking the board to make a
Well,
vote.
is that, but,
Now, if the Board of Selectmen vote no, then the town
Then no on town.
employees will not do any spraying.
No
okay,
spray.
all right, I just, in case we get phone calls. Will we continue having someone, having Mr. Vadas trim it then?
Yes.
So-
That has to be done for site, yes. He'll trim the weeds and if whatever,
But will it
ivy's
be,
there.
but will it be more often now
No,
though?
no. Our budget can't stand more.
Okay.
Teresa?
So is the town also incurring the cost of the licensing for somebody to spray, or are you going
Yes.
outside?
Yes, they are.
We just actually had them both renewed for the right-of-way pesticide.
So how much does that add to the $2,500?
It's
I don't know what the,
about
continue to.
$200 total, if that.
But that's yearly as well, right? Because that has to be kept up to date.
No, every 2 years,
2
I
years?
believe. I don't think it's continuous.
I think it's, no, I think every year they have to
I
have
was
it.
gonna say, it's usually continuous pesticide credits that you have to get.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
do.
I think maybe, yeah, you have to get, you do, you have to do that every year. I could double check for you.
And what, that's training of the personnel?
They go to,
correct.
like,
They go to a...
yearly they go for a kind of
Seminar.
refreshing training, a seminar in certain topics that have to do with their specific area of spring.
Now, would people be allowed to, I know a lot of people don't like the stuff, and if you aren't gonna do it, they'll go out and buy the Roundup and do it themselves. If it's on the side of the road, then is that permitted if it's town property?
And people should be spraying their own property, they shouldn't be spraying in the town easement.
Right.
Because they're now spraying for ticks and mosquitoes in their yards as well, and that's just as bad.
I mean, this is something we can do something about.
Through a bylaw or something?
No, I'm just saying, through our voting today, we
yeah.
can do something about this use.
Mary Tramocorn Road. Are there any other towns who prohibit pesticide spraying?
None that I know of. I know Lancaster sprays, Harvard sprays, all the surrounding towns spray.
Trace?
This question just came up recently, and I actually looked it up. Organic wise, there's two suggestions, either pull it out or smother it. They don't really, organic recommend any spray at all, really, because, again, they're not, you'd have to keep reapplying it, and even with something like vinegar, at some point, that's not really good for your groundwater anyway, because it is just gonna grow back.
Right.
I mean, and I keep getting calls for, my pigs, which pigs remove it. I removed it by the side of my road. Goats, sheep, they also do. The senior center just leased a bunch of goats to take it out over there. There's definitely a big business coming up in that area as a natural means of eradication.
Senior housing, not senior center.
Oh, sorry, senior housing, yes.
Yeah, a little difficult to do it off of 117 and Route 85. and those
Jeez,
kinds
we
of
just
things.
put them out of business.
So.
So
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
So I'd like to make a motion that we stop spraying roadway vegetation. We stop the whole roadway management plan in terms of spraying, and you just do the mowing.
Before you go there, that's not gonna answer the question. Because we have been asked, when Carol Gumbart was here, to spray conservation property. We sprayed Bowers Springs and we sprayed Fifeshire. All right, if you're against vegetation on the side of the roads, how about spraying completely?
Conservation Trust or
The Conservation Commission.
so town-owned property?
That's correct. We sprayed for Carol, and we did the lime kill.
If I may, I'd suggest that if the motion's going to be as such, that we just say that, make it as simple as say that town employees will not use any spray of that nature, period. And that would cover any location.
Well, just before us tonight is the approval of the vegetation plan, I believe, right? Isn't that the vote?
That's correct.
So I think Jonathan's made a motion, basically.
But what Harold is saying, if the vote is no, then you're not going to be spraying
Right.
anything,
I would not.
including anything the Conservation Commission asked you
I
to
would
do.
ask the motion to say that, so we cut all spraying. If you're worried about spraying, cut it all.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's before us tonight is approval of the vegetation
Correct.
plan that was submitted by DPW, and
I guess what we're trying to understand is, we're trying to cover is that when, not if, but when we get a request from the Conservation Commission to go up and spray, use that material on conservation land as opposed to the roadside vegetation, what direction do we have from the board? How should we respond?
let's have them in.
I'm sorry?
Let's have them in
Okay.
before the...
All right, so for tonight, it's only the roadside vegetation.
That's all that's before us?
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's right. I just wanted to make sure that Harold had clarification on that.
So do you want...
Now, Jonathan made his motion.
Okay, to vote no on the vegetation?
On the roadside vegetation.
So I'll second that motion.
So this vote in the affirmative is to not move forward and to disapprove the municipal roadway vegetation management plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose signify by saying nay. Nay. Don't go anywhere, Harold. Discussion next is regarding the proposed work on the Wilder Road culvert.
So I asked for this to be put on the agenda. We got a citizen inquiry, and you responded to that.
Yeah.
And at some point, I forget what the trigger was, there was something that went on, and I decided to go meet with the citizen. And so, admittedly, I'm not an engineer, it's not my wheelhouse, but this person had significant experience, and I went down actually in a inspected culvert myself.
I did too, today.
And I actually looked down through the culvert, and It's roughly a 1 foot square channel, right, that goes across Wilder Road.
No. It's a 3 foot. I'll show you why in a bit. Why.
A 3 foot opening?
That's right.
I didn't see a 3 foot.
Yeah, I know you didn't. No, continue.
Is that an issue? Water is backing up on the high side?
No, I don't think there is no backup. There's no backup in the water. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown, but the threat is that if the culvert collapsed, then there would be backup right onto the Davis property.
That's not even the issue.
Okay.
All right. All right, I'm going to show you some pictures, since you say it. See, this is the wall, the head wall on the east side. That's the side facing the center of town, okay? The Davis property.
On the Davis property, side of Wilder, okay.
Yes. You will see there, one of the big boulders has moved, and you will see how these boulders, that's on both sides, these boulders have come out and dislodged from it. That wall is moving. This is a picture of the head wall, the first stone you see. That stone is broken and will fall in. As you look down that culvert from the east side, you will see this. And I'll show you what you should be seeing. There's a void up behind here. I tried to get that picture as good as I could from here. On this picture, you will see a stone right here. That stone went originally right here. That stone fell down. And please look at the hole. See the hole at the end? That's not an optical illusion you're looking at. Not at all.
I looked at both sides myself.
Okay, just wait a minute.
Yeah.
All right. Here again is a picture of the wall failing. If you're on the west side, looking in, you see this. That's a top stone. That stone originally bridged the top of this. That has fallen in. All the rest are horizontal. And all these stones you see here were not stones that were left when this was done. All those were in the culvert itself, in the wall. The wall is moving, you have the top coming down. The dip you see in the road is typical of what happened on Main Street in Houghton, the Houghton building, Burnham, Sugar. If you want the long list of roads that this has happened on. Here again, you'll see that stone. That's why you only see a 1 foot. It's originally 3 feet, 3 by 3. This culvert is dropping, it's collapsing. The dirt is sifting down through that culvert, and that road is dropping. I have paved it 3 times. Where you see patch is over 2 feet deep. I've stopped it this fall so I can make the winter. I believe there is a sinkhole forming under that road. Now I see it on the west side dropping. And if you see it, you'll see the dip starting. The one on the east side is getting worse. And it's worse than it has been in the past. Since I knew you went there, I had an engineer give his opinion of it, a written opinion. Since evidently what I think doesn't matter.
And just to summarize, in that letter, the engineer says in his professional opinion that the culvert needs to be repaired.
It's repaired or replaced, we can't repair.
I made every effort and spoke to this very man, yesterday. Today's the 23rd?
That's right.
So the 22nd, if today's the 23rd, I called last week, I didn't get a call back, I called Monday, and I got a return call either Tuesday or Wednesday. But what he told me was that they were never hired for purposes of assessing the culvert. They were hired for assessing the soils which would be used in the rebuilding of the culvert. So I said, who has said that it's an imminent failure? This man, right here. At least I'm not sure about his, but it's definitely Greg that I spoke to.
Yeah.
This is yesterday, and this letter's dated yesterday. But I'm not questioning, I haven't had a chance to read this, but I did ask if there was a report which said it's an imminent failure, and he said no.
This report was written today. when I knew you were going to question whether I knew what I was doing. I had him inspect it.
Well, I'd like to look at the repair option.
There is no repair. We
Yeah.
can't repair.
I mean, that's what I'd like to look in. I went and inspected it. I also read the letter from the neighbor, and this kind of land bridge is unbelievably strong. I mean, the material in there, it might be shifting a little bit, but it looks very stable. I think there is an issue with some of the fines sifting down, but I think it could be repaired for a lot less, and,
I don't know how you're gonna repair it without digging it up. Especially when you have a stone that's already dropped down in there, a top stone. I'm telling
I'd
you,
like to
it's a
explore that
dangerous
option.
situation, and I'm notifying the board also.
Now, when do you expect, because I do see when you drive down this, that you feel a dip in the road,
Yeah.
but how long has it taken to develop the dip?
In the last year, it's accelerated, especially on the east side. But you can't say what's happening underneath. You could be forming a void, and that void could drop very fast. There's something we don't know. That void forming, and if it's a hole and the truck comes down, or school bus, and it happens right then, you're gonna have a bad accident.
I would appreciate it to go there with you and have a view. That's what I would appreciate.
I'll get to folks in a minute, but I'm finding this whole conversation somewhat disturbing. We have a gentleman who, from best of my knowledge, doesn't have a civil engineering degree, who was the gentleman who actually attended the annual town meeting but didn't speak when the article to prove the Walden Road culvert was brought up. And for the people in the audience, that vote was unanimous to go do the repair. And there was a whole back and forth between Mr. Bob Rosadini and Harold. He met Mr. Rosadini asking questions and Harold responding. But apparently Mr. Rosadini wasn't satisfied. And I do believe, Harold, I think you had a conversation with this gentleman, and my understanding is at one point Mr. Rosadini was more concerned about the cost than anything else regarding that particular culvert. And I'm a little disturbed that we have a DPW director who's been doing this pretty much his whole life, and I've worked with Harold now for well over a dozen years. I certainly trust his judgment, and he's not one that goes out and decides, I feel it's spending $286,000 to give himself more work. And I find even more disturbing that I have two selectmen sitting next to me who seem to think that they know more about this issue than the expert who's sitting across the table here. I don't see any one of you having a civil engineering degree or diploma that was brought in. And I'm finding it interesting that everyone is convinced on either side of me that there are other ways that this problem can be tackled when neither of you have any experience whatsoever in this matter. It's just like having me weigh in on a cancer patient and whether they should have surgery or take aspirin. Aspirin's cheaper, so let's do aspirin for a while because I think that might work. And I think this constant questioning of experts here, which I think the real argument is money. I don't think the two of you or Mr. Rosadini wants to spend the money.
Culverts are a big issue in town, and they're a big issue with voters. I've talked to a lot of people have questions about the culvert work. So I'll just put that out there. So it is an issue that people have been watching, and they have concerns about. Every year, it's this big amount. So there are some suggestions that came up, constructive ones. One is that we try and bundle the culverts as one project, put out to bid to get a better price rather than this kind of, over multiple years rather than doing kind of one every year. So that was proposed.
Well, the thing is, you can't determine when a culvert's going to fail. So you're not gonna go out and, let's do 5 culverts this year.
No,
just be-
we have a whole kind of capital planning, looking ahead. This one needs to be replaced in 5 years, this one in 15, whatever it is, but it's kind of looking ahead, grouping them together and bidding out a group of culverts. And that was suggested by 2 people.
You can't, wait, you chime in, Harold. You cannot group a group of culverts together and say, let's put a bid out for one we're gonna do this year, one we're gonna do in 3 years, and one we're gonna do in 7 years. It doesn't work that way, John.
No, it can't work that way.
It took almost a year's engineering with conservation to go through this. If you'd have done it your way, by the time we got all our groupings together, we would be back in conservation again because we'd run out of time. This box culvert was my last choice. I've only done 4, I've done 4 box culverts in town. The Sampson Road was one because it was so high and the walls were so big. South Bolton Road got a box culvert because there was no cover. Burnham, there again, no cover, and Randall, there was no cover, so I was forced into using a box. East End, Century Mill, and Burnham, all those culverts are all still stone. The stones were filled in with concrete and a new top's put on them. Century Mill is also part of that. There was walls, East End, Century Mill, and that. We've used steel pipes, which are less expensive, and have gone to slip lining, which is less expensive again.
That's what I was gonna bring up.
Okay, the problem is, I can't get in this culvert to slip line. I gotta clear the culvert. We can't get in to clear it. If I could slip it, I'd slip it. I can't. Believe me, it's the last thing I wanna do is put a box in. It's the last choice that I had. I had no other choice, and I discussed that with the engineers. If that stone wasn't there and we could get in and clean that culvert so you could slip it, we could do it. We can't get through that culvert. And that stone that's down, and what I showed you, dirt is sifting down through, and you will have a collapse. It went last fall, a little hole formed like this, and that hole was 2 feet deep. We opened it up and stuffed it with patch. It's happening as we talk. It guaranteed, it is happening. Boxes are my last choice because I know the cost. I would do, if I could slip line that and run the piece out way further on either end, and then bring riprap in and reinforce those walls, I'd do it in a second. And then pump grout into it, and from the top and the side, and it would be done.
But I did get out on my hands and knees and look down the culvert from both sides. I didn't have a flashlight, I meant to bring one, so maybe...
I had the flashlights, so you can see down through and you see it.
But I mean, setting that issue aside of not having a flashlight, so maybe there's something hanging down that I didn't see.
There is. That one on the west side that's where I showed you that picture. Where I showed you this picture of that top stone. And that's why you thought it was a 1-foot culvert, because that stone is bringing it down. And that stone should be horizontal, not vertical.
I thought it was 1 foot because at the ends of both the east and west side, it's 1 foot square.
Yeah.
Like almost pristine, it seemed like the whole
If you look
way.
down through it, it's not. What you're looking is slippage. The walls are slipping.
Well, I would like to look at it again.
I'll say this, every day we put off, this puts us off on Central Register. I've been trying to get this done before the buses run. As it is, we will not do it. Every time we put off, because if you wait until next meeting, if you wait till next week, that puts us 2 weeks off. Central Register doesn't come but twice a month. And we have to go to Central Register and prevailing wage. And then hand it to the engineers to go out to bid. To group them, all the culverts together, what we need to do, you're not going to get it. It's going to be different, because some of the culverts that I've suggested on Long Hill, they're slip lines. Different, completely different. This is a major excavation. There's no other way I see. I can't get it, like I said, I'll repeat myself, if I could get a pipe through it, I'd do it.
Yeah, I'd like to see, an option to repair it, rather than kind of the full excavation.
Well, how are you going to get in there to repair it?
That's what we'd rely on, you and...
There's no way you can get a body in there. I don't know that body that's small. Inside, when you get in there, how are you going to move those stones? It's collapsed. Sampson Road
It's
collapsed.
a masonry project like any other.
That's gonna be the biggest joke I've heard tonight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm
But
sorry.
We had the same thing with the light at 111. First it started out at 275,000 and now it's at 27.
No, that's
No,
unfair.
that's a whole
That's
different,
unfair.
that's a
Completely
whole
different.
different
That was a
fix.
different-
That's a good example.
No, it's not.
No, it's,
Jonathan,
it's
because
wrong, it's a
There's
different fix.
absolutely $200,000 to
I think
$300,000
we
options
can
for
repair,
replacement.
I think we can explore a repair option rather than a full replacement. So you can scoff at that, but I think it's worth
Well,
exploring.
we're not scoffing, it's just the 27,000 was for one thing and the 200-something thousand entitled a whole different
Right,
change,
and-
so it's different.
Yeah, it is different,
wasn't-
but
we
the
weren't
numbers
spending
start
more.
very big and then people look at them and
Because
then
of what
come
they
down.
asked for, because of what the committee, the 117, 110 committee were asking for, that's why that number was big.
So I'm asking for a repair proposal on this culvert.
I'm afraid I have none. You're gonna have to go someplace else. There's nowhere I know, nor my engineers know. They've stated in there, there's no repair that can be done.
I wish, I mean, this is not your fault, but I did take the time to
If you
call
take a few minutes and read it,
and
you'll
speak
see
to him on the phone.
what the summary is.
I would like to look at that, I would like a view. If you would come, I would go there with you, and I would like to have a beam and look into the culvert.
Okay? And then what we,
But that's not a bridge, it's not gonna just like go boom, and there's gonna be a bust in the creek.
I mean, that is,
It's gonna slowly sag. I mean, it's not like this imminent bridge failure, so, you know, I think you're overstating how dangerous it is.
just remember, I've said it.
Yeah.
And I've said it on air. If we have a car disabled or some other problem there.
I mean, so what is the risk? What is the risk?
I don't know what's happening underneath that road. I don't know what the risk is, and even Greg says it could be a void forming. And the void forms, the road drops. And it's dropping. That east side, if you went down and voted, you'll see what it's dropping.
I did. I went down to both sides. I was in my hands and knees.
Did
in
you
the mud.
drive it and feel your car drop?
I drive it all the time. I'm not disputing that there's an impression there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is there, given what the town is facing, is there a less expensive way?
If I could have found it and done it, I would have.
But what
If I could have tried putting a pipe in there, I'd done it. I can't.
But what about just scraping and smoothing that out? You know, the
It's gonna
impression.
drop again. It's gonna keep sinking. If you step over the guardrail, it's sinking there.
And what you have are very big boulders and, you know, creating this bridge, and then you have kind of packed earth that fills the voids between them. So yeah, over time, that soil and gravel is sifting down through, but it doesn't mean that you can't take up the asphalt, put down geotextiles that keep the fines from going down. You can fix this from the top. It's not like a temporary patch. You need to like scrape it off, and I know an engineer can come up with a fix for this. It's not rocket science. It's not a huge bridge. It's, you know, it's really like a boulder bridge. And it's like, I think it was built in 1842 or something. It's shown amazing, you know, amazing strength over those years. There's very little movement. And you think of the trucks, you know, it was built for horse and carriage, but you think of the trucks that go over it, people drive on that road very fast. And, you know, there's a little settling from that, but it's not dramatic and it's not dire.
But wait, isn't there like core risk? It's that the culvert would collapse, right? That's where you would get the big.
That's where you're getting the impression is the culvert's moving. That's what's happening.
But I'm not an engineer, or a dirt person, or a pavement person, but when I was down there, and I actually mentioned that 1 foot by 1 foot to Greg, and I believe he concurred with me on the size of the culvert. That was my recollection, and I thought he concurred with me on the phone. That, you know, I wasn't trying to pin him down. He had said that he hadn't written a report assessing the condition of the culvert. So I'm letting him, giving him a pass, you know, I'm not trying to say what he said and didn't say, but I thought he concurred on the size of the culvert, which was 1 by 1.
If you'll see there, it says 3 by 3.
I know it does, but that's, I don't know, 3 foot by 3.
That's only
That's a
at your openings that are moving, that you see the 1 by 1. When you get in the culvert, you get further down, you'll see it's a 3 by 3.
inside of it.
Yep,
3 foot by 3 foot?
that's right.
Yeah.
Mr. Cole, you've had your hand up for some time.
Yeah, a few things. One, the guy in front of you is the definition of a Yankee. He's the biggest tight ass there is when it comes to spending money. So it is amazing to me that the two of you, especially you, Mr. Frayne, who said you're not an engineer, keep on going back to that fact. I mean, so I read 3 pages of Plessy versus Ferguson and suddenly I'm a goddamn lawyer? Like, this is, it is so hypocritical of the two of you who have ran and put yourself in those seats on the sense that the previous select board was circumventing town meeting. Now you two, when it suits your needs, are looking to circumvent, which was a town meeting vote, which there was a full process in play. I'd like to know where your constituents are tonight talking about this.
I mean,
Oh,
don't we
great,
have
we got one of them.
Don't we have an obligation
Okay,
to
Mr.
ask?
Mr. Cody, you know, the language you're using,
Yeah,
No.
I know, I've been told that before.
yeah.
So
could
I'd
you
like to
tone
know-
down the language.
I want to make sure you hear. I'd like to know why you two seem to think you suddenly are engineering experts on a culvert, there's a process. This gentleman has consistently moved culverts around on a 5-year capital plan based upon what ones are working, which ones can be delayed, all in the face of attempting to save this town money. Reposition them on the 5-year plan. It goes before advisory, it goes before the selectmen, and ultimately goes before the town meeting. So now you two want to circumvent that process. Makes a hell of a lot of sense.
And
No,
that's
people are
incorrect.
asking
That's
questions.
incorrect.
People-
Where were they?
Where
Where
were they
were
at
they
the town
leading up to
meeting?
this? Where are they tonight?
What, but why, everyone got these
Well,
meeting, can I
yeah,
finish? But
yeah.
they got this notification that this was gonna be, we had a week, I believe, or 2 weeks, this.
Yeah.
And not a single
No,
person
And no,
spoke
but
at
why-
town
I-
meeting.
that's-
He doesn't want to come here, you know, the man who wrote the letter, he doesn't want to come here and get yelled at by Mr. Cody.
No,
Or,
I'm just, my
you know,
question
no.
was, why wasn't this brought up before?
I don't know, it's very
I just-
imperfect.
I
I
mean,
see where
maybe
you're
I'm-
coming
maybe
from,
I'm
and it's
naive
very
about it, but I
imperfect.
just- I don't.
It's a lot of money, it's a big thing to do, and if there's a way to do it better and cheaper, it's worth exploring it.
And
And
you
this
guys-
guy,
you
he
guys
has
can all blow
proven,
up.
he's
Mr.
done that.
Cody, nobody has called on you.
excuse me, I'm the chairman, I run the meeting.
Well, then do it.
You watch your mouth as well.
He's proven that he looks at all different avenues on how to go about fixing a given culvert. When it can get delayed, or another culvert has suddenly failed faster than expected, he's moved that up into the queue in front of capital planning, which then brings it before advisory. So he's proven using different examples.
This culvert's on the radar over 2 years. We did 1 year of engineering on this, and it went before the town voted for it. Now, we brought it back then, so this has been 2 years out there. 2 different town meetings this has been through, as so has the Berlin Road culvert. Everybody knew this was coming, and capital planning knew this was coming. And it was all laid out before capital
I
planning.
feel we have an obligation to ask questions. It's not casting aspersions on anybody. I mean, doesn't this, that's what we're supposed to do. And Mr. Chairman, I have to say, to tell another member on the board to watch his mouth is inappropriate. And there's supposed to be decorum and civility in this room. These are difficult conversations, but telling another man to watch his mouth, I disagree with that.
Well, we agree to disagree.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground tonight. The DPW and I really need direction from the board. I think, I respectfully suggest that the board make a motion to do whatever it is.
I make a
we'd like to see
motion that
for
we
the
have
next
a
steps.
view at the site with Mr. Brown as soon as possible, and so that everyone can examine the culvert, bring Ducharme and Dillis with us, and that's my motion.
I'm sorry, just so I can understand, the motion is to
Have a view.
to have a site visit for the Board of
Site visit.
Selectmen, engineer,
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, and
Whoever wants to
myself.
come.
Okay, all right, I just want to make
And
sure.
bring your boots.
So I just have a
Good
question,
boots.
is Ducharme and Dillis the engineer?
They,
Yes.
you know, yesterday there was no report assessing the condition of the culvert. Today there is. They apparently, I haven't digested it, but bring them along.
So we'll try to get that scheduled before the next Selectmen's meeting on the
As soon,
14th.
yeah, I'll make it, I mean, as soon as possible.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt because there isn't a second yet, but I just wanted to clarify.
Second?
Mr. Brown, let me ask you a question. So we're going to have this, we take the vote, we have a site visit. I believe you stated previously that there is no other solution.
There is none that I can, and nor my engineers can see. And he mentions in there that they can, with the blockage, we can't slip line it. We can't put a pipe in it, we can't get it through. We have no other option but this box.
And you also indicated that the continuing to delay this, if it gets delayed to a certain point, then it can't be done because of the...
We will still have to do it because I find it is a safety issue. And being a safety issue, I believe it has to be done. It will just be something that we will be inconveniencing. I would say by the time we get to it, the buses will be running.
Right.
I was trying to avoid that, but looks like I'm not going to be able to.
Martha?
Martha Remington, Chairman of the Bolton Historical Commission. These ancient culverts in town are artifacts of the town that have existed for well over 100 years in most cases. Mr. Brown, in the years that I've lived here, has always done his very best to fix these so that they're safe and so that they honor the original structures that these were. I've had occasion over the last 12 years to travel Wilder Road 2 to 4 times per weekday. And I have noticed over the last 2, 3 years, maybe even 4, that there's this dip at the bottom of those hills, and the one going east gets deeper and deeper. The traffic has really increased on Wilder Road. The speed limit is 40 miles an hour. This culvert has taken a lot of punishment. So I know it costs a lot of money, but I trust Director Brown's evaluation of these things. And you could take it down and put in a cast concrete thing, and it wouldn't be the same as restoring this ancient culvert in the location that it is. This was the turnpike. There wasn't any 117 past Wilder Road there, so I just wanted to mention those things. Thank you.
So what are you proposing to do for $280,000?
It's not $280,000.
Are you restoring it, or are you...
Where did you get $280,000?
That was a number that bubbled around. What is the price?
It's $186,000.
Okay, it's $186,000, and what is being proposed for that?
It's a box culvert with 2 head walls.
So it won't be restored, it's going to be
So
replaced.
you're gonna dig the whole thing out?
No,
you're
we're not
put a
gonna dig.
concrete-
We're not digging it all out. We're only replacing that side and putting 2 wing walls. The rest of the stones that are there will still be there.
Well, that would be good to understand on site what the proposal is. So I look forward to that.
Ms. Gerken?
Assuming that Harold is correct, and I agree with Martha, I've worked with Harold for 25 years, and I've disagreed with him on things, but when it comes to safety in this town, and looking after the people in this town, that is his main priority. So I just want you two to think about that if you disapprove this, and there is an accident, the cost of the liability to this town is much higher than fixing it the way Harold is suggesting. And if there are people injured, if it's a bus that goes down, I wouldn't want to be sitting in your seats, gentlemen. Because you are the ones who are now deciding, neither of you having any engineering background. I fully appreciate that you need information, but I suggest that you hire a competent person and you let them do their job. This concept doesn't, you seem to want to micromanage. And even though Brad and I have had our disagreements on things, I absolutely agree with him. This has gone through the process in town. It has gone through capital planning, it has gone through advisory, it has gone to town meeting. This, you deciding that you don't want to do this is incredibly disrespectful to the hundreds of hours that these people have put in working on these projects. So I just want you to think about that. You're two people. There are lots more who have worked on this, thought it through. No one just rubber stamps in this town, believe me. That's something to think about.
Unless you have something new to bring to the argument?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, Mr. Chairman, that yes, these are two people on the select board, but they are representing the residents of the town who elected them to this seat on the board. And I'm sure that they do get feedback from people about, especially seniors, the taxes being high in town. So it's not that these are just two ogres that were voted to be put on the select board. They're representing residents in town who agree with their sides. Thank you.
Well, yes, Martha, that is very interesting, but as a couple of people asked, you know, this is not the first time that we have heard from citizens who either have an opposing viewpoint or don't like something, or, you know, we've talked to people. And so far, you know, in all of these instances, you know, other than yourself, you know, coming here tonight, no one else has showed up at the Selectmen's meeting. All of our phone numbers are available for people to call. I haven't received a single phone call regarding this issue since it's come up several years ago. Mr. Lowe hasn't heard from anyone concerning any of these issues. So yeah, I find it to be a bit suspect that all of a sudden at the 11th hour here, after a process that's gone on for a number of years, that we're somehow mystically hearing or supposedly hearing from citizens who are concerned about the process, or opposed to the process, or opposed to spending the money, or wanting to find a better way, but no one ever shows up. No one ever shows up. There's no phone call, there's no email, there's nothing. So while in some cases that may be accurate, there have been just too many instances so far of we've heard from citizens. Well, I don't believe Mr. Lowe knows who these citizens are.
Well, we got an excellent letter. They're very detailed, very good points. So we know that person. So it's not just hearsay.
Oh, we got something from one individual, but of course this individual is not an engineer either. So
That's the problem.
I believe he worked for an engineering firm for 40 years.
One individual who's caused this 2 little field trips by 2 selectmen. God knows the amount of time additional that Mr. Brown, Mr. Lowe has had to tack on. Thank God they're not paid hourly to add on to this. So one individual who is so concerned about not being able to get up and speak about it for fear of getting ostracized, or so he's got to write a damn letter for one person. It's ridiculous.
That's how things
circumventing an entire process.
That's how things are. I hope are going to be different now. You know, so I get a phone call, and I'm going to go look at something. I'm going to get information. I'm going to track it down. I'm not going to kind of just go along to get along.
And you're going to circumvent the town meeting process?
Circumventing.
It was voted at town meeting.
People call when they call, they have concerns, and you look into them, and that's what we're doing, looking into something. But all of a sudden, everybody explodes when you want to look into the details of a project. You know, you might be feeling really rich right now, you know, in terms of the town budget, but we're starting.
I'm fully aware.
We're going to be in January, February, and March again, and there's not going to be any money to claw back then. So we need to start now doing this hard work, looking at every project.
I am fully aware of the budget. I'd like for you to get up to speed with the budget.
we have,
Are we saying that we want to put a Band-Aid on the project rather than making it well?
What I'm saying is I would like to go there with Mr. Brown, with the engineer, with anyone else who wants to come with good lighting and take a look at the culvert. I have been there, I spent probably an hour looking it over. You know, I didn't see any clear evidence that anything
Did you
was...
see it in the pictures I have?
I saw your pictures, yes. I did.
Where are you confused on it?
Well, again, I'd rather be there so we're comparing apples to apples.
Well, I wish I had known that. I wouldn't have wasted all the time I did today.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to pay yet another visit to the Wilder Road culvert. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. I'm only going along with it to try to move the process forward. I fully agree with the comments that Kenny Gerton has made. What we're doing here is trying to just decide not to spend money, and there's no regard to public safety being done here at all. Well, we'll have another meeting, and we'll have another visit.
And I would disagree with that. I would disagree that I have no concern for public safety or the public treasury or the process. This was raised in a very articulate fashion by somebody with 40 years' experience at an engineering firm, and this is not a willy-nilly, you know. There is no one here wasting time. Our obligation here is to inquire and investigate. That's our job.
Then Mr. Rosadini should have showed up, and he should have been part of the process 2 years ago. He has lived in this town a long time. This is not something that just came up 2 days before annual town meeting.
In your comment about geotech, geotech doesn't work the way you said it does. Geotech has to have something under it that isn't collapsing.
You can fill the voids with different sized stones gradually.
How are you going to get down there and get in there? I'd love to stop you in there.
I think this issue, I think we're done with this issue.
Let's move on.
We have totally unqualified people making suggestions on how this work should be repaired, done, and move forward with. I think it's totally inappropriate for this meeting. We've made a motion, we approved to have another site visit before the next meeting, which is July 14th.
Let's micromanage.
And we will do that. I'm not taking any more questions from the audience, so I think we're done with it.
Mr. Chairman, the vote was 3-0 for the site
Yes.
visit? All right, thank you.
3-0 for the site visit.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. Is there any way that we could have signs put there to slow down the traffic so that when they get that dip, they're not forcing it down even more? I think that speed limit of 40 and the amount of traffic on that road is dangerous in itself. Thank you.
Especially on a
Mr. Lowe,
motorcycle.
can you comment on speed limits on roads in town?
I'm talking, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, only about as you approach that culvert
I
from both
understand.
hills.
We could put up a sign that says dip in road, bump, something like that, to warn people, but we can't ourselves lower the speed limit.
Does that take the state, Mr. Chairman?
The state, the Department of Transportation is responsible for the speed limit on every road in the Commonwealth.
Even when there's danger, if it's going too fast and there's a higher volume, then
I believe that I thought they were only responsible for numbered roads.
No, all.
Every road.
Every road in the state. Every road.
That's right. So we could put
It is.
a dip or a bump.
Yeah, we could put a sign up, a caution sign of some
Because
sort.
we've had some signs up before and they made us take them down on our rural roads.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
That duty was given to the registry gave it to DOT.
Yeah, we just had a meeting with DOT, and I thought the reason they had control over 117 was because it's a numbered road.
They have certain other controls.
Yeah, there are certain other factors to do with number of roads, but speed limits are every road.
Every road.
Don't leave.
No.
Next up is a request to overspend snow and ice by $30,000.
Evidently, there's a little confusion with snow and ice. This same budget was given to us in '06, all right? So that budget has not changed since '06. What has changed, and this is just a little example, back in '06, a 10-wheeler, we were paying $92 an hour. We're paying $117 today. Six-wheelers of 26,000 GVW, we're paying $75, we're paying $91 today. A 1 ton, we were paying in '06, $64. We pay $78 today. Salt then was $43 a ton. And that cost us, a load cost us $1,666. Today, it's $67.85. That cost us $2,374.75. Sand was $2.85. Today, it's $12.98. In '06, I spent $8,550 for 33,000 yards. Today, I spent $36,540. We send our trucks out to mechanics, they were $60 an hour. Today, they're $85 and $95 an hour. I had the same amount. Before the first flake of snow hits, I will spend between $50,000 and $80,000 getting equipment and getting everything, and getting salt in and getting everything done. This budget has been discussed at least twice, and Brad will correct me, or Penny will, on up it to $250. That was 5 years ago. This budget should be over $300,000 to keep up with all the increase in costs. Tires were $200, they're now $600. Everything is higher, and we're still dealing with an '06 budget.
So that's why we need $30,000.
And just as a little background, snow and ice is really the only line item that you're allowed to overspend by the state. Every community that I'm aware of intentionally sets it low, because you don't want to set it higher and tax at a level that you may not necessarily need to tax at. So we have it at $180,000. It is overspent every year. Advisory has a $100,000 set aside for snow and ice that they plan on. So really, I mean, the plan is $280, even though the line item is $180. And another thing that some people simply aren't aware of, and these are the things you're not born knowing, so there's nothing wrong with not knowing it, but from the state perspective, once you raise the snow and ice budget, for the sake of argument, if we did raise it from 180 to 250, the state will not allow you to lower it. So once you've raised it, you're stuck with it. So that's why advisory year after year keeps it at 180 and then has the set aside. And then if we go beyond 280 like we did last year with that horrific winter, as we had turnbacks from other budgets at the end of the year, we could apply turnbacks to the deficit as well. And at the end, I think, after all the turnbacks that we used, there was a small amount, I don't want to try to say the number off the top of my head, there was a small amount that was set to the tax rate because there was no other way to pay for it. But normally between the 180 budget, which Harold's right, it's about half eaten before we have any snow, and then the set aside that advisory has, and in a normal year, we can deal with that. And the $30,000 that we're talking about tonight takes the total overspend for the year, I think, to 80, which would have us 20 under what the set aside is. So it really falls in part of the plan. And I went over the numbers tonight with Harold, and of the $30,000 that's being requested, actually $26,000 of it is late bills that contractors didn't get into us previously. So it's only $4,000 that really is, and it has to do with the late season storm that we had to. So that's just the background of what snow and ice is. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I just wanted to...
No, I read Mr. Brown's letter to explain the late storm.
So we have a request to overspend by $30,000. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the overspend of $30,000.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Harold.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. Next up on our agenda is to discuss the police budget. Good evening, Chief. How are you? Good, Chief. Lorraine, how are you?
How are you?
How are you?
Gentlemen?
So as a follow-up to the last meeting, where there was some discussion about the police budget, and we were asked to put it back on the agenda for tonight. I did receive a question from Tom about the types of training that the officers go through and the causal effect of, it creates overtime. So I asked the chief to be prepared to discuss that. I believe he has that with him.
Yeah, so this came up somewhat in our meeting in March, but I had emailed, out the board the spreadsheet that you had that day. I don't know if you still have them. We looked at fiscal 14, I think fiscal 14 and 15 on various things. Let me just see if I can get it up.
I didn't bring that spreadsheet.
Don, do you know what I'm talking about?
Is that the one
I
that's
do.
about overtime?
Yes, yes, I forwarded it on to the other selectmen.
One second.
Would you like Linda to print out a copy of it?
It's gone on so long. Here it is, I have my copy. So, I'm
Is
sorry,
this what I did this morning that I sent you? Is that what
I
you're...
didn't get anything from you.
Okay, I sent it to Don.
Oh, I thought you sent it as an FYI, I didn't forward it to anyone.
Oh, okay. Well, I can give up to
So the one,
Now, this is just the training I printed out for the last 3 fiscal years.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I think in just this fiscal year alone, it was, depending on how you look at it, credited hours, I'm not really sure what the difference is, but I'm looking at the credited hours
I have them, thank you.
of page 3 for the first fiscal year. 350, we'll round up on that one. The previous fiscal year.
I'm sorry, just so.
Just on the 3rd page, so page 3, this fiscal year.
Of fiscal 16.
Yeah. Looking at credited hours was 344. I'm not really sure what the 686, I was going off the credited hours that they were given for the training. And then if you go to the next fiscal year, page 3, we were at 444.
So I'm sorry, so if we go back from 16 to 15, or?
Yep, yeah, we'll go to the previous fiscal year. The credited hours was 444. We had just about 100 hours decrease there. And then the last fiscal year that I printed out, page 4, was at 650 hours. So I just wanted to at least show you that there was a decrease over the past 3 fiscal years, that the training has decreased from 3 years ago. But there's obviously got to be professional development in this business. We've got to always stay one step ahead of it to be on our best game when we're out there and not doing the right thing when we're doing stuff.
So what I wanted to know is just what exactly that means, like if you could walk us through, I guess just because you raised it, what's the difference between total credit hours awarded and total course hours awarded?
I have no idea, but that's a IMC award.
What it is when we load it in, credited hours is towards the mandatory training that the state requires our officers to have through in-service. So predominantly, that's where you want to show your credited hours to make sure everyone is maintaining their certifications. If you're looking at the total course hours, is the total amount of hours spent in training, which is I believe that goes against. So meaning that that's the hours they're in training and that's what they're paid for.
Okay. Right, and from what I sent Dawn this morning, I listed out some of the pretty much mandatory stuff. I'll go right off it. In service, which that's a mandated.
And what are we looking at? Can you go off of these? Can you just read off these and tell me what? It's just the number,
Yep.
so just to Lorraine's point.
Yep, on page 3, you've got,
Is it all the ones with credits, sorry, that are state requirements, all the ones that have credit?
Well, when we get their training certs that come in, usually they'll tell you right on there how many credited hours of in-service requirement, and we just load it in, just for tracking.
But Chief, can you walk the selectmen through what's actually required by the state in the training?
so the in-service on page 3, on the current fiscal year, you'll see there's in-service training. So it's mandated training that's, and depending on what rank persons are, or what classes they're going to, like the two people at the top are reserve officers. And their actual hours that they went for that time period were only 24 hours. But once you look, and let me see if I can find a full-time officer, page 2, halfway down, Jason Puri going in service training, he's gonna go for 32 hours. It's 4 days that you have to go to mandatory training for in-service. The Narcan training, which everybody had to be certified to use it. We put that in the cruisers just recently. Everybody had to attend a 2-hour class there. We have CGIS certification every, I think it's every 2 years, we have to just take a test and do the reading. So there's a couple hours for each time they do that. The next one, let's see if I can find another one here.
So do you mind, like, going down, picking up fiscal 16? So just going from the top of what you, this is the document you gave us, like, so first one in the row was advanced life support.
That is to send a first responder CPR AED instructor to a mandatory training that he has to go to every year so that he can train us and certify us.
So this is mandated by who?
The state.
The state?
Mass, MPTC. Yeah.
But now this person, he's an officer.
He is a reserve officer,
Okay.
and I also have another full-time officer that's also an instructor. So he would have to go to that class too.
And so they go 8 hours, and this is why I'm asking the question. So that the trainings, essentially, like looking at fiscal 16, so there were 686 hours of training. So those hours, are they all covered with overtime?
I would say not everything, because you do have reserves that are in this list that they'll get paid their straight wage. But if an officer has to take a shift off, like for in-service training, yes, they'll take off 4 days to go to in-service training, their shifts are backfilled with overtime.
Okay. So the training is a big driver of overtime?
It's one of them, it's not the main drive of overtime, hardly the main. You're not gonna see a lot of over-training that's getting overpaid. There's just not that much training that it's gonna show that big of a difference.
Even though it's 700 hours during the year? During the fiscal year?
Sure. We've got 15 officers I gotta keep trained.
Yeah, okay, so, but this is 700 hours that they're not patrolling or policing, really?
Not all of this, because there's some reserve hours in there. So if you look at, there's also reserve officers that you'd have to back out 8 hours or 4 hours for the reserve officer to drop that number down. So that number is not, every hour is filled with backfill of overtime.
Because a reserve officer doesn't get paid overtime?
They can get paid overtime if they work more than 40 hours, but they're not coming off of a shift to go to this training. They just go to it and we pay them their regular wages.
But it's still an hour, for very simply, it's an hour that's not spent on policing due to training, right? Or maybe the guy wasn't scheduled at all and he's just getting paid.
Right, he's going on his own time, but he gets paid by the time to go to be trained.
So it doesn't contribute to overtime, but it does, it's not time spent policing.
Not on the reserves.
Okay.
No, because they're not coming off the schedule to go to this training.
Right.
A full-time officer would.
But now, if we went down, and I know there's 3 pages of it, and forgive me, but if you went down all of these rows.
Yep.
Advanced life support, marijuana and impaired.
Not mandatory. If you want, I can just.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's what I want.
Next one, chief, that's mandatory. Next one, mandatory EMD, chief training conference.
And can you just give a little summary, like what's going on? in each
Yep,
of these?
that's in service for chiefs. That was mandated this year, that was something new. The CJIS, that's so that they can run the computers.
And that's mandatory.
That's mandatory, he can't touch that computer unless he has that certification. The 2 firearms instructors had to be recertified to be firearms instructors.
And there's no, because it doesn't show any hours there, or does it?
It may not have gotten added in, I can't explain why that's not there, but then the next one's not there either. The next one, the next 2, executive development is not a mandatory.
Okay.
Everything in tactical and moving shooting, that's our annual firearms instructor, or firearms qualification rounds.
And that's all mandatory?
That's mandatory, we gotta do that twice a year, every officer.
But this is for the total year, right? This string of 8-hour day, 8 hours? That would be for the fiscal.
Yeah, that's at least one of them.
Okay.
And in-service training, Paul Smith, that's mandatory. Command staff budgeting is not. Firearms legal updates is not. That is just something that anybody that does the marks, who does the license to carry permits, should go to this so they know what they're talking about and they understand the whole system on how to do the permit. Stinger spiked tire deflation, that it's not a mandated course, but it's required by us that they need to be trained. Prevent in custody deaths and recognize agonal breathing. That could be considered a mandatory class, because every time you go up a rank structure, you have to take a suicide prevention class. So that one we could say. Sergeant's annual leadership conference is not. That's professional development. Assessment center testing is not. Command staff internal affairs is not. FBI leader public relations is not. All the Narcan is mandated by us so that they can use it, every officer. In-service training, again, I'm going back to in-service training. And the one under it is also part of that.
And the in-service is mandatory or not mandatory?
In-service is mandatory, yes. And in some cases, like the chiefs, it was 3 days at a conference, and then you had to go back for a half a day 4 to 6 times, depending on what classes you had to finish. Let's see, where do we? Firearms hoarding was just a class that seemed interesting, that we should have an officer somewhat trained in that, but it's not mandatory. RAD certification is not a mandated thing. It's for our officers that are certified to be recertified. In-service training, those are mandatory. CJIS, again, mandatory. Narcan online, mandatory. CJIS, mandatory. Narcan, mandatory. In-service training, mandatory. Liability in public records, not mandatory. CJIS. Autism is a in-service class that came up.
So this, please forgive me, but CJIS, that they're not mandatory, or they are?
They are. Those are the ones you have to work the computers in the car, the laptops.
Okay.
The DRE, if we want to keep our drug recognition expert up to date and certified so that she can do drug recognition. It's not a mandated class, but it's required instructor training. In-service training, that's mandatory. CJIS mandatory. SEMLAC active killer response.
What was the autism thing for?
That's part of the in-service.
And that's mandatory or
Yes,
not?
that was, yep.
Okay.
SEMLAC is not. In-service training, Narcan, both are. Dust and bust is not. We unfortunately don't have the luxury of having a detective that's Monday to Friday that can do this stuff, so everybody has to wear 5 different hats, 10 different hats.
Take fingerprints?
If we have a break-in and entering, every full-time officer, we have been trying to slowly bring up the speed so that if the detective is not available, who's just a stipend officer on the day shift, then everybody can pretty much do it. That's the theory of that. Advanced baton and OC cert, that is not a mandatory class. Field Force Command Planning, that's a military class that Will Warnken attended while he was on his military training, but we only paid that's just added in there to show he had this training experience. We paid him to go on his military training, which we had. In-service is mandatory, CGIS is mandatory, DRE, again, is something she has to attend to keep her certification. All the TASER training is now, it's mandated because we're carrying them, so we have to have those. The MCOPA, and that is not mandatory. School resource officer, I had to send a new officer to that training for backup to the one we have at the school, because Sandra Lawton left us about July 2015 to go to Woburn. She was the 24-hour SRO, and then Eric Kukos went to be the SRO, and he was the backup at the time, now he's the full-time SRO, and Casey is our backup SRO, and that's the school resource officer. In-service is mandatory, gun permit, and site service is not. Now, most of those that were doubled are the sergeants, went to a 10-day command executive training that the MPI, Mass Police Institute, puts on. And what that was once nicknamed was the new chief school for chiefs to, once they became chief, would go to this school to learn accountability, liability, budgets, scheduling, the whole ball of work, to just try to give them a quick insight on how to be a chief. They changed it because they weren't getting enough people to attend, so they opened it up to all command staff, sergeants, lieutenants, captains could go. So it was a good opportunity, both learned quite a bit from it.
So I guess my point in seeing what's mandatory versus not mandatory, I mean, is there any way to reduce the amount of trainings that?
And the simple answer, yes, of course it is. Yeah, the 10-day executive command class, yeah, we could cut that out. We wouldn't offer that down the line for stuff like that. So yes, if that's the board's decision to keep a very tight control on that, then yes, we just go to mandatory training.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I mean, I don't see my role here, I would see my role here as asking questions, but you're the professional. I mean, the way I see your role anyway, partly, is managing the risk versus the budget. I mean, I'm sure in a perfect world, you'd like more and more money and more and more.
Of course, I'd love to send them to twice as much training.
Right.
You know, training keeps us out of liability lawsuits. Failure to train is a big risk to the town. That you're a lawyer, you know what happens if an officer does something they're not supposed to, and they come back and they look at the town and how we've trained them. We're liable. There's a failure to train. There's all kinds of lawsuits about that.
No, and I'm sure you're correct, but I guess, just what I was just saying is that we would like you to help us reduce, my thoughts are reduce the trainings that are unnecessary or superfluous or repetitive, or instead of going every year, go every third, or but that's something you have to do, right?
Oh, if that's put in on my plate and that's what I'm told to do, then of course that's what I'll do.
But the risk, which classes, how often do you do it? Every 6 months? Every year versus 6 months, or 3 years versus 2, or what?
Well, that depends on what the class is. If I can, like the 10-day command class, I would not offer that out to any further people if that's the decision of the board. I wouldn't send them to that kind of professional development. I would only have to send them to the mandated stuff.
And how much would that save?
$5,000?
So what this?
I'm just guessing, I honestly couldn't even.
$1,000? Out of, because roughly you're running roughly 100,000 a year in overtime roughly.
Yeah.
Right. So how much of that would be reduced? Say you did no training, what would the overtime number be?
I did no training, what would you, just
Well,
take a wild guess at that
Just to
one?
correct you, our overtime budget includes, well, we're looking at the past overtime budget now,
Okay.
not the one moving forward. The included the SRO, which those receipts were offset by the school district. So realistically, our overtime budget was about $33,000 less, because you have to remember that overtime was for the resource officer, their backfill. So that's a separate discussion to the training. So we were looking at about 75,000 culminated overtime, which included training and plus all of the backfill for the fringe benefits, vacation time, personal time, sick time. So because we're
Because I
looking
think for
backwards.
fiscal 17, you got about 100,000, I think, built in, right?
I think that's.
Correct, that is correct.
And then it was the same as roughly fiscal 16.
Without that budget, when
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I'm not
say-
gonna hold you to it, I'm just
Exactly,
trying to.
but as to.
We have
It
copies,
did-
we actually have copies of the budget here if you want to
I think
reference.
it did go up because of the contractual pay rate went up.
It had to go up because of the wage adjustment that was done. I think that's the first time overtime was raised, it was increased, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
in
I think it did go
in
up
a
just a
few
little
years.
bit, but I don't have it.
I was just referencing
So
my
this is-
backup
Sure.
as to how I determined those numbers. Oh, that I have, of course.
Is this,
And
where
where's
is the current ledger?
Right,
Sorry.
that's the current one.
Right, no, we don't have the FY, I just have the current ledger for.
I don't have the
No.
actual backup to support like what each hour is spent in training.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If the question is overtime, I think there are a number of categories. As you said, this contributes, but it doesn't contribute much. You have the resource officer, which contributed. I believe in this past year, we were down an officer for
6 months.
6 months.
Sandra left us in June, mid-June of last year, so for the first 6 months of the fiscal year, we were down one officer until we did a hire, and that creates
And
overtime.
Lancaster and Stowe reimburses for the SRO?
The school, yes.
The district does?
The district, it's combined.
But I mean, the 600 hours, that's 600 hours not riding around in a cruiser.
Well, no, somebody's, well,
We have to back.
if I didn't backfill, there wouldn't be somebody out there. But the person goes to the training, another officer gets the opportunity to come in and take that shift.
And on the training time, the 600 hours in training time, they're paid at their regular wage, right?
When they go to training?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's six,
If the backfill is the overtime.
so it may not necessarily result, I don't know.
It's really not gonna save a considerable amount of, when you're talking 100,000 on overtime, this little bit's not gonna, even if it was 10 grand,
Training does not,
it's not the big
no, I don't,
package that's taking, or that's contributing
How can
to
that-
this.
how can that be? How can collectively there be 600 hours spent somewhere else and it not result in over?
No, I'm doing the big picture of 100,000.
Right,
Okay, it contributes a little bit, but it's not contributing as much as you think it does.
okay.
It's the backfill of the vacation, backfill of the comp, all the contractual stuff is where the money is. These are just little stuff.
It's one of the silos of rights to time off, which may or may not have to be filled with overtime, but so does sick time, comp time, 4-2, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the big ones that are gonna add up to a lot of, to the 100,000. This is not gonna.
Okay, that's
The
a-
mandate, if I wiped out everything, it's a little bit more, but we can't do that. We've gotta go to training. The mandate is not.
Okay, that's why I asked.
Yes.
It would be good to get a number. I mean, you threw out 5,000, but it would just be good to get a number on what could be saved between the mandated and
I think that would be partially on the FY17 budget. If is that broken out a little bit, that Or is it all
Oh,
combined
it
in
is,
overtime?
it is when we calculate. We do know the number of hours.
I
and
mean, is there a
calculate it that way.
ballpark, like, rate that you use, say 600 hours, is it $30 an hour, 20, 40?
Well, how I look and budget it depends, because we have reserves, of course, get
Right.
administrative wage, and the officers to backfill each shift. It goes out to the right of first refusal. It could be filled with overtime or a reserve officer, it depends on maybe.
But does it shake out over the year at a certain rate?
I typically budget at an overtime rate for the top step officer. And with that said, it balances, yes, so I don't know.
What is that rate?
I don't know, well, you take the current rate, what are we at now? I believe it's 20, I'm not sure what the new rate is for the officer.
I don't have.
Yes.
$26?
Something around that.
$26 times 1.5 is $39.
Okay.
So that's 23,000 out of the...
That-
Yeah, if
But that's all the
hours,
training.
Right.
Yeah, so if I, you
Right.
know...
And if it was all...
If I took 100 hours out, we're talking $3,900.
Right. Okay.
So 200 is gonna be 7,000. We're not talking,
It's the contract.
yes,
Really,
the trainings,
the contractual obligations is more than the lion's share of the overtime.
Okay. This is very helpful. So, when we met in March, not to put words in your mouth, but, you know, I said, how can we save money? You know, you have to manage the risk, but how would you do it? And you said, well, I think you said something about not backfilling shifts.
oh, no way.
I'm not saying that you were recommending to do it, I'm just saying, if someone were to call in and you didn't fill the shift, that would have a savings impact.
I would not have said that.
Okay, that's fair, yeah.
There is no way I would not backfill a shift right now. That's,
I think what was said in the meeting is if there was a way to save overtime, on overtime, then since the major cause is the backfilling of shifts due to vacation, sickness, whatever, that if there was a way to save money, that a significant amount of money, then clearly the way to do it would be to not backfill the shifts.
Okay.
But the chief also said that he would never recommend such a move, and I said, neither would I. But, so, he did say, if that's what you wanted to do, the way to save the money would be to not backfill the shifts, but I would not recommend it.
And to clarify, you also made that statement at the last meeting.
that would have to come from the board to not backfill. It's a safety risk to the officer, it's a safety risk for the town, only sending one officer to a call. Backup would be too far away from another town, you don't even know where they're coming from. And I think years ago, the town wanted 2 people to go to a call, 2 people to be on duty at all times, when possible.
And they actually voted to increase the budget.
The budget to accomplish that.
At a previous annual town meeting.
And I see a lot of, 2-car responses, just because I live and work in town, so I see it all the time.
Yep.
Is that necessary on every call?
It depends on the call. It really does. We changed something, I'd say almost 6 months ago, that going to a medical call at the high school, or going to a non-life-threatening medical call, we always would send 2 because we were the only people getting there first. And you don't know what you're walking into, but if it's a simple, non-life-threatening medical call, we're only sending 1 car. If it's a life-threatening call, it's everybody on duty goes. That's one way, obviously, we only send 1 car up. If it's not a serious accident up on 495, only 1 car is supposed to go up. So there are some simple ways that we kind of keep 1 car available and only 1 car goes to the call. But that doesn't save any money, that's...
Sick gasoline.
Well, okay, so we save a
bucks.
couple cents of gas, but there's no savings.
Because there you have a guy on.
He's already there, we're already paying for him to be here, so.
Okay. Now, what about just the general, what is the biggest thing confronting the Bolton Police? And I'm not asking you to answer, but I'm gonna offer one of the things that confronts the Bolton Police is traffic and speeds throughout the town. I mean, as I drive, I remember Chief Alfano in one of the newspapers saying that there was no safe road to walk on in Bolton.
No, I agree 100%, yeah, the roads are,
Treacherous, so.
it's the way that they're designed and just set up.
And I think part of it's the speeds that are on, because you go to other towns, like you go to Harvard, same road, you cross over on Harvard Road to Harvard, drops 10 miles an hour. But I mean, how can the police department help bring down speeds,
Well, I think I got shot down real early at the advisory committee when I wanted to put on extra patrols for radar traffic. And, obviously, the money wasn't there. I think we had $40,000 extra to put another car
It's
up.
42,000, but I think.
Well, that's overtime and sending people out to do more traffic enforcement. Right now, the officers wear, like I mentioned earlier, they wear a lot of hats in this department. And they are busy. So we don't have time to go out and do radar 8 hours a day. We had a highway safety unit that was dedicated to doing that. That was, 15 years ago. And that slowed down traffic considerably throughout town. Because people knew that white Explorer was sitting somewhere and traffic enforcement. But right now, with the workload everybody has, it's tough to send people out and do more work when they're already in the station too much as it is, trying to get their work done.
When you say work done, like, what is it? What are we doing?
Investigations. You have a car accident. Once you get all that and you get back to the station, there's at least an hour or two of downtime to do the accident report. If they get 3 or 4 incidences during the day, they've got to go back in and write a report. So it's not like you sit down in 5 minutes, you have the report done. You've got to get social security numbers, you've got to get date of birth, you've got to get tons of information to fill the incident report. And arrest, forget it. If you get an OUI arrest, both people are tied up pretty much for the whole shift. Because it takes that much time.
Do you have this ongoing, very serious problem, like when we were at the Tri-Town a couple of weeks ago, about the turn onto Forbush? The students crossing 117 to try to get to Classic Pizza. And I forget, one of the gentlemen said, I've seen that happen 1,000 times, and I told the story that night. It's happened to me twice. I'm waiting to turn onto Forbush, because you have to wait, and jut across, and as I'm jutting across, I look back, and students are running right in front of my car. Twice that happened.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman in the audience, and he said, I forget how many times I've seen that happen. He lives nearby. But it's like that I see, the speeds have to come down and it has to be enforced. And if there was more enforcement, there would be slower speeds, calmer traffic, and safer roads.
I'd have to disagree 100%. I've sat in front of that school many a times doing radar, and that's not a speed zone. That's not where they're going fast. They're going fast down Forbush Mill, they're doing 50 miles an hour. But you know what? I could sit there and have an officer there 24 hours a day. Leave the next day, the speeds are going to be the same exact way. It's just people's nature.
But I thought you said, whatever the program was 15 years ago, slow traffic down. What's the difference?
I can't slow traffic down on every road. In Main Street, you didn't go over 30 miles an hour through Main Street.
And people do it every day.
Okay?
Every day.
But you go to Forbush Mill, you go to Wilder Road, they go speed everything. I've got 2 people on...
Radar boards?
Radar boards do nothing. Yeah, we had one, didn't do anything.
I mean, there must be some way to slow traffic in Bolton, though, and keep it under the speed limit. And
if you want to give me more people and give me more money, I'll send as many people out as you can afford. But that takes money. And you said yourself, the tax is going up. I've kind of said, no extra stuff. I don't know where I'm going to get it. I can't give people overtime to go do radar enforcement, which would be the best thing, is go out and do 4 hours of radar after your shift. They can't do 4 hours of radar on their shift. They're too busy.
Why don't we take a momentary break and allow Mr. Cody in the audience to...
So, Chief, I have a couple questions, just for my edification purposes, because I just want to make sure I understand this. So you said when a regular officer goes to training, that person goes to training and is paid regular time?
Their regular 40 hours, they take a shift off in lieu of the training.
So they're going to training and they're not being paid overtime. But at the same time, that person is not out on Main Street. So someone else on the force comes in.
At overtime.
But why? So if that person come in, like I guess...
To fill the shift.
Well, who's gonna be there? There's gonna be a body, so...
No, I
yeah,
understand
listen,
that,
yep.
but if I'm the body, and it's Monday, and my work week starts Monday, I haven't even put in 40 hours yet. I'd show up. Why wouldn't I get paid overtime until I went over the 40 hours?
It's police work, we're 24/7. We do the whole week, and it's all time is good time. So I know what you're saying, it's, you're the numbers guy. They haven't, yes, they may work an overtime shift on Sunday, the first day of the pay period. But they're working their 40 hours somewhere in that week. It's just a combined total of hours. You can't look at it that way. It doesn't, it's not...
That's why I'm asking.
It's somebody working an unscheduled shift. The shifts are scheduled 6 weeks out. And every full-time officer has their schedule. So now if you can't get a reserve to work, you have an officer who's already scheduled for their 80 hours every 2 weeks. Taking an unscheduled shift, that creates overtime.
Regardless of where it is, whether it's the beginning or the end.
But if it's scheduled,
Yep.
isn't class time scheduled?
Oh, yeah.
So if it's scheduled for him to be out on regular time, why wouldn't it be scheduled for the backfill to be regular? I mean, I'm paid a salary, all right? So I remember I was paid hourly. I worked at Wachusett Mountain. No matter what I did, I got paid 40 hours. Once I hit the 40-hour mark, that's when I started getting overtime. That's how I thought overtime worked. But
No.
you're describing a different definition.
Because we're 24/7, there's 3 shifts. So if you're scheduled for your 40 hours, what does it matter if this is regular and then I just take it now his last shift is overtime? It's still gonna work out to overtime. He's still working 48 hours.
All right, so you're running I'll buy that when you're running the park. So the other question I have is, can you just explain, because I believe you told me a while back, because I was asking you about the overtime on Main Street, and I remember the white Bronco.
Did I get you?
No.
No.
But I absolutely remember it. So, when the thought earlier this year of increasing the overtime on Main Street to account for additional...
Well, it wouldn't be just Main Street, it'd be
Sure.
townwide, it's just not Main Street.
But can you share what that translates into? Because the way you described it, yes, it's additional hours of overtime with law enforcement and revenue from tickets, but it's also, does it not increase the amount of time that a police officer is sitting in court disputing those tickets, and subsequently the ROI is not necessarily what everyone seems to think it might be?
You are correct, yes, that will translate into more overtime because now you get a clerk's hearing, I have to send the court officer to do all the clerk hearings, and if there's any justice appeals, that could turn into overtime for the officer now to come in. Plus, you're making more arrests, depending on the time of day or what day it is, you could be making more arrests. So now you've got to do more reports, you've got to now go to court 2 to 3, 4 times before this even gets there. So yes, that would generate even more overtime in the long run.
But I'm not suggesting write tickets for a revenue stream. And I'm not...
No, I think no, I don't think that was the game plan, is to make money to.
Yeah, no. I
That
wasn't saying it
wasn't a
was,
good-
I mean, it's just a byproduct, right? I mean, when
It is a
Lauren.
byproduct of ticketing.
Exactly. I wasn't saying it was a function of, let's specifically go
Yeah,
out.
no.
I didn't get the impression you were thinking that, or anyone was thinking.
No,
But-
I would like to slow down the traffic and make it compliant with the speed limit.
All right, if we could, Mr. Sloan reminded me that Jonathan has a hard stop at 10 o'clock, and we should give Jonathan an opportunity.
I'm sorry?
To speak, because at the last meeting, you did make the statement that you thought the police department budget was out of control.
Yeah,
So I think,
I was looking at the ledger, which comes out, I guess, every 2 weeks, and looking at the percentages, and then I think you sent your spreadsheet through Dawn, and so every year, overtime seemed like it was growing, and it was also getting overspent every year. So that didn't seem sustainable to me. So that's why I brought it up at the last meeting, and, I think it's an issue. So it just keeps growing, and you're spending more than what's budgeted, even though it's growing every year, so it's never catching up.
But we're in a business that things change, like we explained with a person leaving our department and leaving a hole. That was a 6-month time period that all those shifts went to overtime. So those are unpredictable type of events that we have no control over. We've added more staff over the past few years, and that's going to increase all the overtime, but we haven't gone over our fiscal budgeted amount of money. Where Sandra left, I'll bring up Sandra who left, I still have her wages that now can be transferred over there. So I might have overspent somewhere, but there's a reason for it. And yes, if like I said, if the board said don't fill those shifts, I do what the board tells me to do. But
for instance, Chief, in FY16, yes, the overtime line was overspent, but as of the end of May, I don't recall the percentage of the ledger that just came out today, but as of the end of May, the police department budget, with 1 month left to go, was at 83% of budget. And for instance, we knew we had makeup in the wages line because we had the former chief budgeted at a higher rate, and we weren't spending in some other areas. So while an individual line item such as overtime can run over, on balance, the budget was under control and is. I mean, with 2 weeks left to go, I want to say we're at 93% of budget.
Right.
I think that's what I read.
yeah,
So we,
I think it was 90%, wasn't it?
it could be, I mean, I'm just working off the top of
Yeah,
it.
80,
But my point being that the police budget as a whole
89.
will not require an advisory transfer at the end of the year. The budget, the self-contained budget is on budget. And yes, we had an individual line item such as overtime run over, as the chief said, largely because we had 6 months where one officer down, but it was made up in other areas. So the budget as a whole is intact. But yes, I think as of end of May, the overtime line was, I think, is 126% of budget.
Yes, and we are aware that if our overtime budget is, like you said, overspent, we cut back at the end of the fiscal year, and we have to make that decision to not backfill shifts. And yes, we will do that to keep our budget intact and not go over.
But I guess that just begs the question, I mean, when you don't backfill shifts, what about entering into some type of agreement with the other towns, Stowe and Lancaster, for backup on the 11 to 7 or one of the shifts so that we could share the costs a little bit?
I think that's a whole other discussion ballgame.
Would be a mutual aid agreement.
Yeah, we already have mutual aid agreements, but.
By the county, right?
Yes. Well, so yes, so Stowe, I can't, I can use them, but they're in a different county, obviously. They're not gonna, they would want something, yes, they're gonna want something in return to be that second backup officer all the time. If we call them every once in a while, there's no charge. They come over, we go over to their town, they come over to us. Yeah, I really wouldn't
And what
suggest
about
going down.
using more reserve officers, hiring more reserve
It's
officers?
contractual. We can.
The contract doesn't prohibit hiring more reserves,
No.
it's just who gets the overtime.
Yes, we can hire more reserves, that is a possibility, but it's a 50-50 split on the open shifts.
Overtime.
Yes.
Again, Mr. Frayne, Mr. Keith needs to leave at 10, but I think we should allow him to.
That was my issue related to overtime that I brought up last week.
I think it might be helpful for the people in the audience, the people watching on TV, if the selectmen would try to understand the budget and offsets to budgets before they make sort of what I consider an outrageous statement that the police department is out of control. They will probably turn money back into the town this year, so therefore the budget is not out of control. I think you have to really understand how the budget, what offsets are when they don't spend money on wages. It's offset with overtime, but it doesn't mean the whole budget is out of control, or even that overtime is out of control, because it's offsetting the wages that haven't been paid. It's really very basic accounting, but at the same time, I think you have to do a little more effort on your end to understand the budgets of the big departments and the labor budgets, as well as the things they do, Harold's budget, the library's budget. I think it would speed up the conversation, because you would be more knowledgeable about the questions you're asking. And I have one other suggestion. I sat through 2 meetings the last 2 weeks, and I have to admit, your meeting was supposed to stop at 8:40 because you were going to go into executive session. It is now 10 minutes of 10. On all your meetings, you are running incredibly over on asking people to come in and speak with you. No one minds coming to talk to you. They do object, I think, to coming in and it's being expected to wait an hour or an hour and a half to speak with you, because you are not capable of either creating an agenda that is realistic, or that you can't cut things short and say, you know, we've spent too much time on this, we need to go back to another meeting. But it's very disrespectful for people to ask people to come in and sit for an hour and a half, just to wait until you get around to talking to them. And I just want you to think about that. I know it's hard setting setting agendas. You two especially are very new to this. But I think you have to think of what these people who come to hear specific things that you set an agenda out for. And I think just being cognizant of that. And also learning a little more about each, but you can, I don't know if any of you have ever gone and sat down with the chief or with Harold to say, tell me what the constraints are in your department. Let me understand your department better. You don't have to do it as a group, just maybe one-on-one. But it would educate you to how these people work. They're your employees, you owe it to them to understand what they're doing. Just a point of view.
Well, since we have you two gentlemen asked to have the chief come back in, are your questions answered? Do you have any further outstanding questions concerning the budget or particular line items in the budget?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, well then, let's move ahead to the next discussion.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Is, again, since we had this at the last meeting, there was a request from Chief Nelson to fill the vacant lieutenant position, of which we had some discussion last week, and was asked to continue the discussion to this meeting. I stated last time, I'm perfectly fine with this position. Existed before Chief Alfano came into play. It was actually with Chief Hyde back 12, 13 or so years ago. I know and have worked with the police department for well over a decade. I know the amount of work that both the chief and the lieutenant need to do, and as I said, I'm in full support of you filling that position. So really, the discussion again is more for you two gentlemen than myself.
Yeah, I mean, I see this as an opportunity to to make a cut in personnel. And I think personnel costs are really what's driving the budget in many departments. And yeah, so I'm not in favor of filling this position.
Mr. Frame?
I'm listening to the questions.
Craig, you had your hand up. I'll let you go next, Mr.
It seems to me that the departure of Chief Alfano was made easier because we had a lieutenant ready and waiting to go. We've been in the town for years and years. I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of the lieutenant's position just for that reason. If you want to cut people, I would think you'd go to the bottom ranks and cut on another officer rather than who's supposed to be, the person's supposed to be in second in command. I mean, I guess you could argue that maybe there's a sergeant that could take over for the chief if he leaves, but I don't know that that's appropriate. I'm not aware of all the duties of each person at this point, but it doesn't make sense to me to get rid of the lieutenant's position just because he moved out to a chief's position.
Well, I think also it doesn't really make sense to cut an officer because we would be in even more of a drastic overtime position, so.
I totally agree.
And just for the board's edification, if we were to look at reducing the workforce, if I remember the contract correctly, we would need to reduce reserve officers before.
That is correct, yes. I'd have to, if we went that route, and I don't think that's a smart way. I do disagree wholeheartedly. The lieutenant's position is an essential part of our rank structure. It's definitely needed. The workload is very heavy. And what it's going to do is I'm going to have to delegate some of this stuff to other officers. It's going to take them off the road to do more work in the station. Okay, you want them on the road, you want them to do traffic enforcement. This will be a byproduct of no lieutenant. They're going to get more work because I can't do it all, Lorraine can't do it all. We're only two people, and we've lost the dispatchers that would help Lorraine doing her clerical work. So it's unneeded.
Right, just I'll let you opine in a second. I think also, to echo your comment, Penny, the fact that we're having this kind of conversation here this evening when the gentleman who has most vocally indicated that the lieutenant's position is not needed has not yet met with the chief of police to discuss anything with him since he's become a selectman. And I'm quite mystified as how someone can make this kind of decision without having had an opportunity to actually speak with the chief of police concerning the matter.
I'm sorry, may I speak after Mr. Sharpen? Or just tell me when it's my turn, I'm sorry.
You may go.
I would like to say with all due respect, I mean, having been your town administrator for over 7 years, I've worked very closely with the police department, and I'm over there quite a bit. I always tell them when I'm coming, but I'm over there quite a bit. And the lieutenant's position is not a nice-to-have position. It is, in my professional opinion, an essential position. I agree with everything that the chief said. It will have, I think, you talk about unintended consequences, I think it would have unintended consequences to not fill the position, and I do see it as a critical position, and in my opinion, it is a position that needs to go back.
So I'm just going to speak, have grave, very interested in your budget, contrary to what people have said. I've worked incredible amounts of hours digesting everything I can. I mean, the contracts are, 30 pages apiece. I have diligently pored over those, so to say that I haven't done any work on this is untrue.
I was fighting about you.
The fact of the matter is that since 2003 or 4, it's more than doubled. I just keep grappling with the same question: how much can the people of Bolton afford? If people call me and
Could
say,
you just step a second, Tom? Mr. Keep,
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can stay a little bit longer. So that's why
Doesn't
I'm
bother
looking
me.
at my cell phone.
So the way I'm gonna look at this is that this is an ongoing process. It doesn't drop dead tonight. I mean, the budgets can't go up. They just can't unless we, just throw in the towel and whatever the bottom line is, we raise the taxes. That having been said, I don't feel articulate enough about your job to step into your shoes and cut a person and hire a person, and I'm not there tonight. And so, I'm not gonna stand in the way of that hire. Not that it isn't warranted. I'm not saying that either. I mean, not that it is, but I'm not trying to say that filling it isn't warranted. But we have a serious situation here that goes on and on and on. Massive amounts of money that we owe, that are unfunded liabilities, and so, but I don't feel comfortable standing in the way of filling that position tonight, so I would vote in favor of it.
I just appreciate what Mr. Frame has just said. I've never implied that you haven't tried to do your homework. You were certainly ahead.
Well, you said we don't understand budgets, and
Well, yeah, a lot of.
so I would disagree with you. I've run a business
I
successfully
realize,
for
that's not the
18
point.
years.
We should stay on point. I think that Mr. Keep's point about we just have to cut. First of all, remember, you're not the first people who have gone through this budget. Advisory, there are 6 people on advisory who go through this budget. They knew exactly what was in the budget, they approved it, the town went to town meeting. I think if you're going to talk about changing people's budgets, you need to work with the individual departments, you need to work with advisory going forward. But to just arbitrarily say to the chief, we're just going to cut this position, when you have no idea what the position does.
And I would disagree with you.
No, I'm not saying
there
you-
too. I sat through every single
I'm not talking about you,
advisory
Mr. Frame.
committee.
I think Mr. Keefe is the one who said, just cut it. Claw back, I
You
believe.
have to listen to the citizens, and they are very concerned.
I know.
They want tax relief, and they want reductions in spending. And this is what it looks like. These are the choices we have to make.
Not that, you don't do this in a vacuum. You do understand.
No, it's not-
You work
it's
with
not a
other
vacuum.
people.
Right.
Well, you're sitting here making a decision when other people who have worked on it for a long time and have supported this, and you're saying, oh no, we can't do it, we're gonna cut it. Well, I'm sorry, you have to either learn to work with the department heads and advisory before you make these decisions that are going to affect people's jobs. You are their
Right.
managers.
And I would have to respond to that, having sat through every single advisory, let me
You
finish.
did.
Every single advisory committee meeting, gavel to gavel, some of them went until 11 o'clock. There is no money. We spent, in some instances, spent hours on $100.
I realize
And
that.
here, this is an $80,000, $90,000 position that could save.
That was built into the
I gave Mr. Keep's budget analysis are dead on accurate, but I'm not qualified, and I don't feel comfortable, stepping into those shoes and cutting that position. I'm not doing that. But I also have concerns about, the traffic enforcement. It is a very big issue for people. What's coming of our town that 22,000 cars can roll through, and a lot of them are doing over the speed limit? And I take your point, to get it done, I think you came in with a number of an extra $42,000 during advisory to do the traffic thing. Maybe that's something we ought to think of, if that's important to people, and keeping people safe and maybe being able to walk on your street once in a while.
That's just a Band-Aid, it's not gonna solve the problem you're talking about.
Well, I'd like to hear whatever suggestions you have about solving the traffic problem and lead.
Money, I can't do it without money. And I know you've said the budget or the town doesn't wanna spend money, they wanna cut money, I understand that. But to do our job,
But their neighborhoods can't be overrun by traffic and cars and speeding vehicles where it's unsafe to go on your street.
there's 100 miles of roads in this town. How can 2 people be out there doing what you want them to do? It's impossible. Okay, we're putting this on a public, everybody's gonna be speeding now. We can't be everywhere, and if this lieutenant, another thing, we are gonna turn into a reactive police department. Right now, we are very proactive. We go out there and we try to shake the bushes as much as possible to find stuff out there, okay? The lieutenants are a big key to this whole thing. And by delegating those jobs out to more officers and sergeants that are already their plates are already too full, that takes away from that time you want them on the road. And if I don't backfill open shifts, there's even more. The one officer is not gonna be out there doing as much as he may want to do, because what's he gonna do if something happens? You know, they're gonna do what they have to do, but they may not be as proactive. I don't wanna go 20 years backwards here. And this is a job that came in 12 years ago, and regardless, $80,000 is not gonna save that much money for your overall big picture of the budget.
I see, what I would like the police to deliver to the town are slower, safer roads where people can be out in their community, walk in their neighborhoods, not hear, not hear Jake breaks, not hear traffic speed. That's what I want for my 1.4 million.
25,000 cars go through town.
I know.
Okay,
I know it's
my
not easy.
officers haven't increased by the number of cars that go through town. It goes by the population, okay? I don't have 10 officers on a shift to do what you want me to do. It's impossible.
We have to figure out how to do it. Because it would make the town a better place to
Well,
live.
the first place to start is approving the lieutenant's position. Let me get that going. The longer that takes, the longer things don't get done around here. Simple.
Barbara, you have a question?
There was a website that I used to go on, and people would say the towns that they don't like to drive through because of the traffic enforcement. And Bolton was one of those on the very high of the list. And still today, you talk to people, oh, I don't like to drive through Bolton because the cops are always watching. Now, you take your two cruisers and you put them on traffic enforcement, okay? We're gonna stop the main traffic. Hey, now I can go to the outskirts of the town and I can break into a house because they're all tied up and I know they're busy.
The kids used to count,
It's a give and take. You can't do that.
when we were on Main Street, the kids would count how many cruisers were in the lot, and then pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
They were gone. They knew there was no cruisers on the road because everybody was in the station. Now it's a little tougher, we're on Wattaquatic, but people they've got apps that tell people where we are.
Yeah. It's a give and
So,
take.
I can only say, we need to start somewhere, and this is the place to start. And if this keeps getting delayed, your roads are not gonna be addressed like you want them to be addressed.
Is there anything else that either the audience or Mr. Frame would like to? No. Okay. Well, since we have lost Mr. Keep.
We still have a quorum.
You have a quorum.
No, I realize that says we're still going to take a vote, and we do have a quorum. So I'll start by asking if someone wishes to make a recommendation or a motion to make a recommendation to fill the vacant lieutenant's position.
What's on the agenda, please? What's the one?
Request from Chief Nelson to fill vacant lieutenant position.
So I'll make a motion to authorize Chief Nelson to fill the vacant lieutenant position.
Okay. And I will second that. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Giving me a
for
start.
my questions.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder to the board, it is the board's policy to not enter into executive session to discuss labor matters without all three selectmen present to be able to participate. So I don't know if you do want to go into executive session or not.
No, I think we should not do that. That has been the practice, and I think it would be, it's not fair to Jonathan. You should be.
And you did receive an update email from me today, so you do have something to think about.
Sorry we didn't tell you that.
Yeah, sorry, John.
Well, we didn't know it was going to run till after 10. We were hopeful. But it's always good seeing you. So we will not go into executive session, so then I will, unless there's some other business we need to conduct, I will take a motion to...
No,
Are there any signatures needed? Are there any
I
other
don't have any
signatures?
minutes for you.
Okay.
They're stuck with me.
All right, then I will make a motion, well, if somebody needs to make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Do you want to do the one tonight or you want to?